So I want to just briefly go through the procedural element of calling the meeting to order. And just to note that this is an unusual gathering in that it's supposed to be a little bit less formal. This is just a goal session. There is a camera here taping this. There are people in the audience. This meeting, of course, is subject to the meeting rules, and people relayed to me that they were interested in taping it. Which, of course, under the law, they are more than able to do. And so instead of just having people tape it with their phones, I was going to ask you this afternoon if we could just do a high-quality product and have Grafton TV here to do it. And I only mention that because, you know, as big of a fan as I am of open meeting law and of taping and public participation, there is also something to be said for being in a room where you don't feel like you're going to be judged for asking a dumb question or having an idea that's a little bit outside the box. So I want everybody, despite the fact that we are taping this, and it is a meeting, to really feel like if there's something on your mind, if there's a goal that you want to express, a question that you have, an idea that you have, please feel free to throw it out there. My one and only rule, well, maybe two rules for this meeting, is that we all be respectful of each other, and that I want you to say what's on your mind. All right. If you have a question, if you have an idea, please share it. This is the opportunity to do so. You know, none of us is born into this world with an absolute knowledge of how municipal government works, or how it should work, or how this community should look going forward. It's up to us to come together for the benefit of the community and collaborate on those things. So I hope that's what we got out of tonight. And in the spirit of sharing and admitting that I don't know everything, it just was brought to my attention today that we recently had a meeting where we took a 2-to-1 vote, and I thought that 2-to-1 vote was binding, and it was pointed out to me that I was wrong, as I frequently am. So that's a whole other thing. We'll take it up another time, but I thought I would share to make myself feel a little bit stupid and silly right out of the gate, in the hopes that other people will feel free to make themselves feel stupid and silly over the course of the evening, so that we can get some ideas flowing. So with that, my short-term goal is to be quiet and let other people talk. Doreen, you've done this before, and you've been through this with Sutton, so if you want to take it away and launch it off.
Sure, I'd be happy to, thank you. So I just want to add too, you know, this is how our first goals meeting is, you know, set up, and it's going to unfold the way it's supposed to in the next couple of years. This is our first goals meeting with this board, and so I don't really have any formal agenda of how this is, you know, to be done. So if other board members have ideas of how we kind of want to arrange things, you know, we can definitely do that. And I was going off of, when I brought this to the board's attention, I was going off of what Sutton does, because I work for the town of Sutton. And the vision was really a goals meeting is a retreat, an opportunity for the board to get together without cameras on, without an audience, for brainstorming, for open conversation. And that's not how this has turned out, and so that's okay. It's going to be less of an informal conversation, I think, tonight, and more of a, you know, structured goals list that we can kind of maybe look at short-term goals, 1 to 3 year goals, 5-year goals, whatever it may be. I know Tim brought some color coding labels too, if we want to write down all our goals individually, and then maybe discuss the ones that we think are either a priority or that we may have in common. Or, you know, I know me being a new board member, my list a lot of it is informal. Some of them, as Ed kind of brought up, are just questions I have as a new board member, like, things that I don't think the town hasn't been working on, but I just want this opportunity to be able to ask questions, see where we are, being able to ask Tim and Becca, or, maybe other board members who have sat and had this conversation in the past. Are there policies around this? What are we doing about it? So that's my thought, and I'm kind of interested in just sort of maybe starting going around and seeing what, your vision was, Jen, or your vision was, Peter, and so we can just kind of collaborate and come to an understanding of how we want this to go. My thought is, maybe we could write down, or if we have written down our goal outline to start, and then we can either, review them one at a time, we can categorize them, we can say them individually. We also have to talk about meeting minutes, which I don't think we did.
No.
So, I mean, Peter's the clerk, or Becca could take notes. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, whoever wants to do it.
Well,
Who wants to be the writer?
I saw
If
you
he's
go.
gonna participate in goals, it's not
It's gonna be
appropriate to write the notes,
hard for
so.
me, but if,
Between the two of us,
We'll take-
we can get the gist of
Okay.
it.
Well, this, just, in terms of the fact that it's a
Yeah,
public meeting, and, my vision too is that when we have a regular board meeting, that we would bring this up as an agenda item and give an overall summary to the public as well. So that being said, if there's any notes to be taken. So.
No, again, it's a little different than what we had discussed, so we're being flexible and going with it. My expectations were we're gonna have a very informal conversation about where we want to see the town going. I'm sure we've all brought lists of ideas that we've had, and so it's really however you wanna do it, start with short term, moving up to long term, or starting big and coming down. I'm assuming that we'll feed off each other and have an idea, and then hopefully somebody else can add to that idea and brainstorm that way.
Good.
so, right, and I agree with you, Jen, I was anticipating a different type of conversation, but I'm gonna try my best to kind of still fulfill in the spirit of the conversation that we discussed a few weeks ago. As we go through, I know there are certain initiatives that are ongoing that the town has been doing, and we've been seeing a lot of the fruits of it. One of them has always been, that I've been bringing up was economic development, a more robust capital plan with more public involvement, and having a long-term strategy over the next few years for funding for the town and evaluating. And I know some of this stuff is ongoing. We just started some of these initiatives. And I think what I was hoping to get out of this today is, how do we go about measuring that as a board? So if we discuss working on recreation, if we discuss working on economic development, like what us as a board with the public can we set up like a SMART goal for that? And how do we measure these going forward? And what additional supports is necessary for us to help facilitate some of these initiatives as being involved with the public in having a face for the select board to be with town administration and or other departments. So we did some of this stuff very similar to on the school department side of things. So we're in a different venue, we have a different set of objectives, but we were able to, at least over the time, align with just a few goals, and everyone kind of agreed, like, here's a short-term goal, medium-range goals, here are the long-term goals, and then build a list of initiatives based on those agreed upon statements. So I don't know if you want to go first. I think it's
Yeah, so
feasible, or just,
So I guess maybe, and Tim, I'd like your, or Becca too, I'd like your input on what would make more sense too from an operational standpoint. We could either break it down. So Sutton usually does it based on a select board member, like we could go like person to person and say, here's what I bring up. And then, later on it's categorized as like short-term goal, and like, like for Peter, like he would own it, like he's the one who brought it up, own it in the sense of, it was his goal that was brought forward. Or we could do it we could break it down based on
subject matter, you know, so whether it's finance, whether it's economic development, whether it's recreation. Do you two have a preference to that?
Yeah, I mean, we can put them in as many buckets as we want. I always want to stay away from a groupthink mentality. So Peter says something, and I didn't think of anything. I'm going to agree with Peter. So the
Right.
reason why I bought the notepads is if people wrote down,
Yeah,
and then everybody read what everybody else wrote, and then those little stickers were supposed to be, you know, indicative of what you thought was a good idea and what you thought was,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
thought, and then the one with the most stickers, just to make it easier.
Yeah.
Talk about those first,
Yeah.
and then work your way down, and whoever wrote that goal should talk about why they think that's important, and you can get consensus, and maybe when we get to the end of the decision tree, that's not a good goal, because it's too expensive, or maybe it's a 5-year goal, then you can start to prioritize what bucket it goes into.
yeah,
So I think the SMART acronym is good. It's what we use for most of our staff. It's getting dated as, you know, HR stuff develops, but
well,
I thought if you could categorize them
Yeah.
like that and have individuals just write down 3 to 5 things, and at least you'll have 15 things right away,
okay,
or 20 things, depending on how many people get. And then you can all look at each other's instead of working as a group. You'll always say, oh, we want to do roads. Everybody's going to agree on roads.
Right.
But be more specific. Do you
Right.
want to fix sidewalks? Because I want to take the town and make a sidewalk program in every quadrant of the town, it's a nice square, and make someone in charge to go mark them with orange paint, and we figure out how much it costs to replace all those panels, and we go get an appropriation town meeting in May, and we go replace all those panels in that quadrant. So I mean, that's very fast. I know I did that very quick, but that's what I was hoping, or I
Yeah.
thought that this
That's
process
great.
would yield.
and again, this is year one, so, you know.
And I don't think you're one and done. I think it's never you're just going to do
Yeah.
it, you're done.
Yeah, so I've done workshops like this with this dot system, and it works great, so you guys open to that?
Sure.
Do you think maybe we should all sit at one table and maybe put the post-its
Yeah.
on one table? Yeah.
So are we putting our ideas on a Post-it and then
Yeah,
sticking
and then
it
just stick it
around?
in front of you, I mean, there's enough room, Cam, to just make an arch.
Okay.
Then people can just walk around and put the stickers up and. Becca and I, for right now, we want to help the community reach its goals. That's our job, is to help you get there, not really to help you. We have stuff. For example, we had a goal of reaching 50 million in new growth. We met 50 million in new growth. It's the highest new growth number we've ever had. We're very proud of it, but it wasn't a goal that the board had. It was just an internal goal that we should be happy about, because it yields $200,000 extra for us to spend in October, provided it gets certified before town meeting. So, things like that, just, those are administrative.
Yeah.
I picture you guys being more philosophical.
Policy, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
Okay.
that's my 2 cents.
thank you. I can open these.
Just break,
Short-term goal, open, post it.
Post-it notes. Remove plastic from post-it note.
there's gonna be a test on it. You don't post it. We'll just spread them out, huh?
Well, I thought that was what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's fine, we can organize them, we can just,
Listen, it wasn't my first day of school, but I feel like it is.
Yeah.
Because I have brand new,
This is school
I have
day.
brand new
I
school
like it.
supplies, so I'm excited. So I don't get brand new
those
school
are fresh
supplies
sheets, fresh sheets of paper.
like I used to.
So is it one item per post-it?
Yeah.
That's good.
Got it.
I don't know how you can do this without eating.
Want me to make you a plate,
You're
Bill?
very comfortable right now.
All right, I have 5.
Oh, that's a good one, that was one of mine.
So do you mind if I just organize these as well?
Please.
Just, and you guys can figure out which one you want to point to?
Yeah.
Oh, I see how it is. You have to have everything lined up. Everything spread out.
Takes a village. It's the same.
Did I punch those holes in appropriate places the other day?
Perfect.
Tess?
This is in no
Or did you
particular
need
order.
to,
So I'm glad
need
you're
to fix
organizing.
what I do?
Let's see.
Across the road. Okay, we bring any tape? Sorry. That's all right. We'll use this, a green sticky to stick it down.
Like fold it up and use it as a board and put them all on the table, you know what I mean? Like have the table leaning against something. You guys-
They're not sticking.
Yeah, not a lot of wall space to, I mean,
Put it right on George
But-
Washington.
well, they're gonna get discussed in the order of you guys putting stickers, so you'll all know what the, you know, who got 4 votes pretty much. I just want to stick them so they don't.
That was what?
That was moved, so that's not a real, it's just a thing to hold.
Oh, come on, I don't get a vote for that?
You can, but you do it with green. Where'd you get blue? You bring your own?
No.
That's what's in the.
You're gonna throw this election.
Listen, I am happy with my new school supplies at the moment.
Just get back where you don't need this. No one had dessert? No one want sugar? I hope this is on camera.
This is as neat as my writing gets. It's good enough.
No, I'm not offering, there's no place.
Do we need to rezone Worcester Street by Wyman Gordon for that plot of land?
Nope.
It's mixed use.
All right.
Well, Lyman's is obviously industrial, but the underlying district allows for the development we want.
I have some questions too that are related, could be related to goals, but I'm gonna formulate them as a question,
Okay.
okay?
No, it's not how it's supposed to go.
You gotta
Like,
make it
like,
di-
what
Dory,
is,
you gotta make it
like,
difficult.
what is the policy for?
What is what policy for?
So, for example, like vacant buildings in town.
No, it's a great discussion goal, because we
Okay.
should come up with a plan. of
But
what
like,
to do for
there,
vacant
so this
buildings.
is an example of, it's been discussed before. I haven't been on the board when it was discussed, so I
Well,
just.
usually we discuss them as individuals, like
Okay.
we haven't really had a discussion as a whole. Is there something
Okay.
we want to do in general?
Okay, good.
Okay, you come this way, yeah, go that way, you go this way.
I just spelled developer wrong.
I think I'm still doing
You will be judged.
I- Okay, I'm going to, try that one.
Why do you wait till he's done?
What's that?
Why do you wait till he's done so you can see it all?
Yeah, are we limited to the number of docs we can use?
No, well, you only want to use one bot per person per post-it.
No, I know, but like, what if I think every single?
Yeah, then you're gonna go with everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of dots.
I had more when I was awake at 3 in the morning. Yeah.
Well, like Dorian said earlier, it's not one and done. I don't think you're gonna do this and be done. You're gonna come do this many times.
Well, if you keep the meeting open until 3 AM, we can sleep and then wake back up.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I don't advise it.
So you want to go straight across?
Yeah, might as well. Then when you guys can all see them, just walk on the table and put them up. Doreen, is that a question or is that? Anything else?
Yeah, it's, I'm gonna put a question mark on it. Because I have some ideas and I just don't know where, you know, some properties stand right now.
Right, well, somebody might know the answer. to this.
Yeah.
Do we want to try to categorize some of those? Maybe
No, I
some-
figure if somebody has just one dot, why even talk about it? Right, talk about the things that have all the dots.
No, what I'm talking about is maybe we have some of the similar goals.
Yeah,
that
I
might
think you have
line
to,
up, But you want to categorize those, 'cause that would come.
after you get to people to think that you all want to focus on, I'm categorizing that. Categorize it now, it's a lot. If no one wants to do something, we went through a whole process of categorizing something.
So what do
Only
we,
one person wants to do.
how many dots do we have to do?
As many as you want.
Yeah, and you can put them on the table underneath, because you're not going to fit, well, you might, you'll put them all on there. You guys want to feel it really small. The green one won't even hold it to the table. And we're worried about it not coming off. So the green one for land is not a real dot, it was just designated to hold that.
Oh, come
down.
on.
It's
We
not
made
a real
it
dot.
Can you put 2 dots on one if we really like to?
No, no, just one dot, don't make it confusing. Because what if one person put 2 dots down? Then what would you do?
These are all good. How many dollars? Some of these are,
Peter,
Yes.
can you just give me,
In other words, there's two types of economic development. There's developing new, new facilities, like developing the land from the board, and then the other one is like, how do we assist existing businesses? So it's like there's 2 different areas of economic
And I don't
development
know
that we
what
wanted
these
to
are.
have measure goals. So this is
So-
one that's for existing businesses, and the other
Kind
one
of
is
are,
for.
but we don't have any
I'm
votes.
sorry, I can't read your, I
I
didn't know what they were.
I'm a better typer, I'm sorry, yeah, I am.
List of things that we would like
That's
to have.
fine.
Meridians, in order to do it. It's
Oh,
decided in a
yeah.
local way,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
if we,
yeah.
are concerned about safety in schools, or, you
Yep.
know, stuff like that.
I like all of these goals.
They're all good.
They're all good.
Well, that's going to make your job harder.
I know. I know, I'm trying
Maybe
not
that
to
might be
put
more of a
stickers on
question,
everything.
but I know that some cities and towns are moving towards replacing all their lighting, which I know we were going to do, and there's some money in the account for that. Also moving toward electric vehicles in the future, establishing long-term goals or stuff like that.
So is that different than being a green community?
I think it's just a step a little bit further. It's like
I think it's more
mandating electric-
policy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's the exclusionary zone?
Inclusionary zoning is mandating that portion of any new development within the zone would require a certain percentage of affordable housing.
Hello.
I can't remember which was the state.
Is it not one word?
But some of these things are already completed, right? I mean,
So that would be, I would,
Is it not one word for?
rather than just like.
No, no, it's an interesting
okay.
Yeah,
social experiment.
it really is.
I kind of feel like we should just talk about all of them.
A lot of them have 3 stickers.
But I mean, like, they all seem,
But we can put them
even
in
if I don't
order.
know, because I'm feeling like I'm not understanding things, so I still feel like we should talk about it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because it may or may not be that.
But just, I think you should, but I think the things that you already have consensus on are easier to talk about, will make that, the things that people
Okay.
don't understand, after you have an easier conversation, the harder ones are easier to have.
So we can put them in order of 3, 2, 1, 0
Yeah,
and talk about
yeah.
them in that order.
Yeah, I would start with the 4s, the
Okay.
3s, the 2s. You might not get to all of them,
Right.
but at least you'll all know what all you want to do.
Okay. And then, since people took the time to come out tonight too and join us, do you want to get up and just take a look at them so you know what we're talking about? You can talk, we'll say them, but you can look at them in order.
It's good, it's good. It's fun. Yeah. Doesn't matter right now, it's the next one. It's 1800, 8,000 copies, 2,300 for, it's a small city, not a big city. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. But yeah, with the kids, horseback riding, jet ski, through the car, after that, and that's the whole book with it. Not fun.
Oh, yeah, railroad, but I didn't have an answer. It was just railroad.
You want a railroad?
I just want.
You have one?
Purpose will be on Browns Road every morning at 7.
I just want to say the word railroad and put it in a goals meeting.
What were they?
Yeah. I was like, what do I even want to say about this? It won't fit on the sticky note.
Someone did actually ask us a question in the email, and it was a good question. They're talking about,
Yeah, the food was
noise
amazing,
zone,
the food was absolutely.
Warcraft,
Yeah, it was just,
Is it possible to do both there? It's like, why
the
would
Symphony
you-
of the Seas,
Why would you not?
which is the
Why would
biggest,
you not do both?
biggest one. They're building, Commonwealth, I think is trying to build the biggest one now.
Well, we got that email today.
Whatever came of
And I
the
responded
sunshine
that she did. And I said I would bring it
Yeah.
up.
For what?
all of like
Son's-
the bike trail. Rex visit a couple years ago when we were asked all these questions.
There is an open space and recreation plan that's
You
just
know, I
been finished.
appreciate
Yeah.
why.
Does it touch upon all those things?
A little bit, but not down, it's more of a
Totally just.
wider plan, like, so it doesn't talk about specifically like.
Anyone who's talking about a home circle, because we're
Right.
trained that they should have been since they were a child, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the survey.
Yeah,
It has
it's been a
while.
So I think one of
And
the
the report
responses
was
is
almost,
No, I should know. I know.
if it's good.
I met him once.
yeah,
I
just
met him
in
once.
general, like what things are important to you.
Right.
And facilities, do they have enough parking, do they not have
There's
enough
one
parking?
time-
Or how do you get there? Do you get there by walking?
So
or
that
do you
hasn't
get there
been
by driving?
compiled yet?
It's so close, yeah, to being released. It's been compiled, it just hasn't.
Jamie said
Yeah.
that, but I don't, she's not.
Because I would imagine any of those would fall under that, right? What everybody wanted.
Okay.
Although you
Yeah.
say everybody, and how many people took
106
the survey?
down
And again,
Actually, I
if you don't ask the right questions, you may or may not, you know, it's,
Right.
you don't always get the right information. I don't know if that's specifically
for. Cut, cut.
But again, that's a low cost.
He can ride his bike now. He can ride his bike.
Yeah, there might be some
Now,
low hanging fruit
Crosby's
on
a
that
little
that
dicey.
also match all
So,
that.
if he was ever gonna do it, I'd make him go down
So
low.
do we want to put them
It's a
in
little wider.
3, 2, 1, 0?
Sure.
I don't think there's any 4, right?
There's no 4. Complete streets management. Citizen surveys.
Take those first.
Okay.
All right.
So the person that put those on should talk about why it's important. And you all have your own reasons why they're important, right?
Yep.
You can put your numbers on there.
All right. For both numbers?
No.
All right, well, I'll start with citizen survey. I know that we've had some done in the past. I think I remember, this was back in probably 2010, 2009, yeah, where we did some surveys. And, but, you know, I mean, just thinking of overall goals too, and just sort of, I mean, I think even based on, you know, recent discussions at board meeting, I'm very much about process and very much about public input, and I think a good way to do that, you know, beyond social media or anything else is just like to put a survey out there, and, you know, so if there's like specific things that we want public input about, we could, you know, do an online Survey Monkey for something and give people a time frame and have them vote on what they want to see. Is that allowed?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
It's funny, Sudbury has a thing called Flash Vote,
Yeah.
and they pre-qualify and register people. And so they just did a survey question about spending money on open space.
Yeah,
So the people who were registered to do it, there was, I'm gonna make up a number, 6,000 people that decided to sign up to be part of the survey, any survey the town ever does. And like 70% took it. And they have, you know, 48 hours to take it. You can do it by phone, text, app.
Just one
or
question at a
email.
time?
No, whatever, you can do as many questions as you want. And then they, you know, update online what the results are, what people said they want to do. So you could ask people what their threshold was for a tax increase, you know, they're willing to pay $2 more for Super Park. You can get down to that granular level
Yeah.
to see what people
Yeah,
want to do.
yeah.
But it's called Flash Vote, it costs money, but
No, I like that. I mean, I like the idea of getting citizen input, but Lisa and I were just talking about the open space and rec plan.
mhm,
And it took meeting after meeting after meeting to formulate those survey questions, right? And we dissected every single word,
yeah,
you know, to make sure you're getting the information you want. You know, there's just, you kind of need to have a focus before you do a survey, because there's just, you can go in so many different directions.
yeah.
But I like the idea of getting quick and dirty, like just answers, just like we would get a feel of the town at town meeting. Like when we were
Or-
thinking
or-
about what to do with the townhouse, like just a feel of the town. It would be a good tool
Yeah.
to just get the
And-
feel of the
and
town.
everybody who participates sees the results when it closes, so no one's, it's not hidden, it's just everybody knows what it is. You don't have to wait for someone to post an Excel spreadsheet of a vote, it's automatic.
So how does Sudbury draft its language today? Do you have any insight into that, to Jed's point?
I think the staff figure
Yeah.
out
But I
from the
think
direction
if
of the
you're-
board how to ask
Yeah.
the question.
But I think if you're doing like pointed questions, like we want to know, again, about
Yeah, should
something
East Street
very-
be one way?
Right,
Easy
exactly.
It's a
topic.
perfect-
Should it
right,
be
yeah.
one way? People
Yes,
say
no.
Probably
Yes.
not.
Right,
Yeah.
Right, there's
You
not
would
a
know
lot of
instantly.
subtlety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I think that,
that's a great example.
just- I like that.
How do you keep it from being self-selective? That is.
They gotta pre-qualify, they have to elect to become a member of the survey group, and
Okay.
then whatever those qualifiers are from Flash Vote under their platform, that's how they do it. So I don't know if it's a unique ID, like a login, like a bank ID,
Sure.
I don't know that detail.
Okay,
Right, so you would hope that people wouldn't sign up 10 times. or-
Right.
It's just as accurate as a survey, to your point.
Well, that's not, well, less accurate, right?
Well, it could be, and a lot of these online surveys are open to interpretation based on the rate of occurrence in which
Right.
you get results. Sometimes, you know, you look for a small percentage of the response rate, but sometimes if you get a huge response rate, you have to kind of question, did someone decide to, you know,
Take it 10
take
times
it
or
100 times?
100 times.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it can be helpful, I mean, as with anything else, even if you get a result back that you don't like, it's sort of incumbent upon you as an elected official to say, okay, well, thanks for the input, but I'm doing this anyway. So if Jen feels very strongly about Super Park, and only 3 out of 10 people come back and say that this is important to them, she's gonna go do it anyway, because this is something that's important to her.
Oh, not necessarily.
Well, I mean, I'm just using it as an
Yeah,
example, but you know.
no, I mean, I don't have any young kids. There was
Yeah,
a
but
definite
your point
direction
is
from the
more,
town.
you're gonna go to town meeting, you're
Yeah.
probably, it's indicative of a loss.
Right,
At the
Right,
end of the
right,
day, so-
right, right, so, yeah,
Probably
if town
more-
meeting
probably more
votes
the
it
point would
down,
be
I'm
like,
done, I mean, I don't. it's
you know,
not-
probably more the point would be like an override question. I mean, if you phrase the question, do you want your taxes raised, everybody's gonna say no. But if you break it down by service, you know, do you know, are roads important to you, are schools important to you? Would you pay $1.36 more a week, you know, if it meant being able to maintain services, questions like that?
To that point, one of my goals, which is further around here somewhere, with Dr. Toronto, you know, was to establish, like, for example, with the town, we wanted to set up a similar fund of growth program for capital. So have
Right.
something that's more stable than the way we use it today.
Right.
And that could be very well a question that kind of aligns with, hey, that's something I want to do. But if the town says, no, but here's the services, at least they're making, at least you're getting some public input, right, to your point on, a little bit more informed discussion versus saying, well, I was at the coffee shop this week and 3 people came up and talked to me.
Right, right.
So,
And it's always only of the people that complain. Nobody ever comes up to you and says you did a good job. And it's, so how it goes. And I always felt like in municipal government, we're sort of flying blind in a way that state and federal government aren't. Of course, state and federal government, they know full well the demographics. They more or less know how people are going to vote. It's all about turnout. But we don't know. We don't know unless someone emails us. And even then, it's only 3 or 4 emails a week.
so I would love to put this on as a priority list. I would agree with that this is something I think we should explore further and see what one would look like. Is that something that sounds reasonable?
Well, you figure out how much it costs, because if it's short money, or see if it's worth the money. But I do think it's a goal that we could accomplish.
And it doesn't
Very
mean we need
easily.
to use it immediately. It's just something that, again, like, part of the goals meeting is just, maybe things we forgot or things other communities are doing that we're not doing anymore that can just kind of be on our radar. So if something comes up where we say, like, the East Street example is perfect, oh, we could do a survey on that and find out pretty quickly, instead of having a, 3-week board meeting discussion on what the right
Sure.
answer is, so.
Although we should still do that as well.
Yeah.
It's not to replace,
Fair
it's
enough.
still not to replace
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah, but we can turn to data,
Sure.
so,
Exactly.
yeah,
Okay. It is good.
all right.
but, all right.
And then the second one was a complete streets plan, which, I know Joe isn't here to talk about, but I know.
Yeah, we don't have a policy, just.
You don't have a
We did not
complete-
adopt
Okay,
formally.
okay,
But when we try to build a roadway, we try to do the bike lane, but we never have enough money under the road stabilization account to do sidewalks. So Snow Road, Carroll Road was the one big, a lot of big trees.
yep,
People's front yards.
yep,
We probably had the width and the right of way, but take down their trees would have been a problem.
would've
So we
been
didn't do
good survey.
sidewalks, but that was the place to do sidewalks. To get
So-
people to those places of commerce, there should be sidewalks on the streets.
but my understanding is if we adopt a complete street policy for the town, we would probably be able to apply for further state grants to help with that. I mean, not completely, but, money aside, everything's gonna be, in lieu of whether or not we have enough money. That's just the name of the game, but I would like to see it as at least a long-term goal. for
Yeah,
the
there's a
town.
lot of benefits to doing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, we had talked about previously, when the roads list comes out, just because every road is different, like you said, Carol, and other ones, but if it makes sense to widen it and put sidewalks or bike lane or whatever, we should really consider it as,
That was a vote of
As-
the board, that was an official,
right, it
Policy
wasn't,
statement.
right, it wasn't official policy, but just, it would be nice as we see the list of roads that are gonna get fixed, to kind of talk about those roads as they're going to be fixed. Although the only problem with that is then the timing is typically an issue. So maybe it's better to look at the ones like 2 or 3 years out, if there's more planning that has to happen, or, because I know on Carroll Road, it was like, we wanted to do that,
Mm.
but then talking to, the whole process of talking to the neighbors and deciding which trees are in the right of way and which ones we could take down, and is that gonna, should we take them down? That just kind of was we didn't really have enough time to,
yeah, no, that was a short time, but that's when you
Yeah.
learned you wanted to do something.
right, no, I know, but I'm just saying, like, down the road,
Yep.
if we still were thinking about that in general. It's good.
so does the board set that policy or the planning board?
Board of Selectmen.
Or is that-
At the time, it was,
Yeah,
I
okay,
I don't know if it was informal, but it was certainly, the 5 membership was like, if we can fit them, we
We
should do it.
yeah.
so, okay, so to clarify too, what I meant by that goal is I would like the select board to vote on a policy for complete street plan. And whether or not we can achieve those goals financially, we're gonna find out, but I'd like to set the goal as a priority for the community.
I mean, it's actually been on one of the burners.
Yeah,
But yeah, because we have a draft, we, CMRPC
purpose
has
of
it.
this
Joe's
meeting,
been
yeah,
knocks on my door every once in a while about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can bring it back.
okay.
How quickly should we do that?
I would say, well, the town meeting in October, I would say 6 to 9 months. Because I don't know if it's a formal adoption at a town meeting or just a board.
Well, if it's a bylaw that's tied to development, then that's something that the town would have to, it says, hey, we agree to adhere to this, which, you know, something that we set, we proposed in language, and at least you're getting public to either say, yes, we agree with something along these lines, or they could turn around and say, yeah, no, not really. But kind of going along to the survey component, you know, if we bring a bylaw to town meeting, at least we get a definitive.
Yeah.
Plus buying, all buying that
Right,
comes with that if it
right.
passes.
So I know this goes back years, we've talked about sidewalks and Grafton to the point, I want a chance to give some input on this, that with the policy, the only recommendation, I know we're probably getting to the weeds here a little bit, is that we look at implementing it 3 or 4 years down the road, because there's so many roads that have been in the pipeline right now to be utilizing that money for today. The only thing I'm concerned about is backlash if we start to try and implement it. So as we're considering that policy, think about a phase in time approach that people can be a little bit more acceptable to versus, you know, hey, we're going to put the brakes on this and make use tomorrow.
The other thing we have to figure out too is when the Complete Streets program started, it was very rigid. It was, you have to put a bike lane on either side, you have to have,
Shoulders,
you have to
sidewalks.
have all of the sidewalks, you know, Grafton wasn't, it didn't fit into the Complete Streets program. But I think the last Moving Together conference I went to, it sounded like they were readjusting that because not every street is you're not gonna be able to do that.
Right.
It's just, they're too
Right.
narrow. You just
Right.
can't put in a 50-foot, 60-foot
Right.
right away. It's just
Well-
not gonna happen.
Right, and I think too, and I don't know what the, you know, as we dive into the weeds, you know, I hear your point too, Peter. You know, there may be rural roads in Grafton where we don't want to touch and we don't want to put bike lanes and, you know, like part of the beauty of this community is just that. We have some, you know, lovely rural roads that I don't even want like a marking in the middle of the road. I want it left
Well, they made a
alone.
conscious decision on Adams not to do that,
Yeah,
so that's one.
yeah.
So we, you know, we can choose that. Like I look at Pleasant Street as, you know, a place that could really use sidewalks, you know, that's become a busy road over the years. And,
Yeah.
you know, so I don't know, my opinion as we dive into it is, you know, we can pick and choose and again, you know, finances are always gonna be the biggest issue. And certainly, you know, we only have so much funding for fixing the roads that need to be fixed and throwing this on top of it seems like a pipe dream, but that's the purpose of a goal meeting, right? It's like until we set the goal and we have the vision, and it might be another 5 years down the road before we even really start to implement it, but it's kind of like, you know, this board thinks that this is the direction the town should go in. It doesn't have to be tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I wrote it down. That's
Yeah,
my-
and you cataloging all this stuff, so that's,
Yeah,
it's all perfect. No one put fixing sidewalks, huh?
No,
Oh, yeah,
sidewalks,
they're there.
yeah,
I
sidewalk
think there's like 5 sidewalk things.
Yeah, there's a lot of different iterations of sidewalks.
Yeah.
So is there any 3 down there in front of you, Dory? Well, do we deal with that one
Yeah,
completely?
this is all that.
Yep. Public, this is well, this is a
Bike
relatively easy.
racks throughout town.
What you got down there for threes?
I got a bike rack throughout town, green energy sustainability
Which is similar to.
Goals.
something on there.
committee, sidewalks, Blackstone Valley Bike Path, facilities manager, land acquisition, yep,
Nope.
Only one.
that's it.
That's it.
Okay. So we got.
Speak for the trees. Just me.
My trash recycling at 0, not even
Well,
my.
know-
it was a question. It was a
It was a
question.
question, yeah.
We
That'll
could,
be
we
up-
could,
that'll
we
be
could
up
break
for
the big
that.
news tonight about trash. if you
Towards
want.
the goal.
Yeah, I'm sort of jaded from the trash discussion. That's
You
why
are.
I was so afraid to put it
She
on.
was there
Yeah.
from ground zero.
Yeah.
so-
We're,
I have a picture to prove it.
So, you missed those days.
oh boy. All right, so this one was pretty easy. Public input item on each agenda. I just thought down near selectmen TA reports, maybe afterwards, maybe down around correspondence, maybe right after correspondence, if we could have just an open agenda item for public input. You know, just if for no other reason than I think it can be a good trust building exercise for people to know that they're heard. One of the barriers, I think, to our communication with people in the town is they feel like we're talking at them and not necessarily with them sometimes. And it can be just, I think, an unnecessary barrier to getting things accomplished. You know, for instance, the bags, like, you know, I think people just assumed that we were doing something wrong when they saw their trash bags ripping, and we were trying to tell people, well, no, look, you wanted the drawstrings, we have to go out to bid, there's only this one bid, and there was sort of a resistance to that information, and I see that happen all the time. So I thought, you know, just a little thing like this, to follow up on what Dorian was saying about public input in the surveys, is to, you know, allow people to come to the meeting, have just, if they want to get up and say their name and where they're from and what's on their mind, to have that there.
Totally fine with it. When I was chair, it was on the agenda. Barry
Okay.
Smith had asked for it, and I put it on.
Great.
It was on there for a long time.
I like it too, and
It's a good short-term one.
Yeah, it is short term, oh, right, yeah.
Yes, that's a lot.
So again, you know, I don't want to keep saying in Sutton, because we're not Sutton, but they have it first on their
Yeah, that's where
agenda.
we
Oh,
had it.
okay.
That's where
Okay,
originally we
yeah,
had
we
it
were
first.
You know, so people don't have to sit through a whole meeting if they want to come and they want to have a discussion, or, you know, they're certainly willing to wait, knowing on the agenda to give input during that agenda item. But if they just wanted to come and have something, it's like the first 5 minutes of the meeting,
Sure.
10 minutes of the meeting, whatever we decide.
And I would always just frame it as it was an opportunity to say something that wasn't on the agenda, because
Right.
if something we were going to discuss, they needed to wait until then.
Right.
And also that we couldn't make any decision about what they were saying.
Right.
We could hear it, and we could decide we want to talk about it at the next posted meeting. You know, so as long as people understand that they're not coming, and what they say, we may or may not be, we can't have a discussion about it if it's not on the agenda, but we can make the decision to put it on an agenda, and they can come back. kind of
Sure.
thing. If we feel like what the input is warrants being discussed further.
But it does go on public record
Yeah,
as something
exactly.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I just share with you, for 10 plus years, previous board that I was on, it's worked out really well. Sometimes people come in and, you know, they say what's on their mind, and that's just something that we do as public servants, and, as we represent the public. And at the same time, some people have brought forward some really good actionable items, like to your point, Jen, you know, later on in the meetings, hey, we would like to put this on the agenda item, and, you know, figure out like what action items we could possibly take, because sometimes you might get a really great idea that someone from the public may have that you're not thinking about. That's their opportunity to really engage with the board collectively and to see if you can get buy-in. So I encourage it. I've always been a big fan of it. I know that there's a flip side to this. It's a double-edged sword. You know, with the great, comes the not so good days. So,
Yeah.
but that's what we're here for.
Right.
I think that's what we get paid lots and lots of money.
Right, yeah, it's true.
But, my point was that, we're here to take all all ideas, even criticisms, so.
Okay,
And can I add to that, do you mind?
sure.
I think even just asking people before they come, because everybody can watch this thing on TV, right? They can watch it. They come for a reason. And this happened to me personally a few meetings ago, right around budget time. I came for a reason, and I never was, two meetings actually, never got a chance to speak because it was never asked public input.
Sure.
I think even asking people when they're coming in before the meeting starts, are you here to speak to something? Are you just here to listen? Like, let's just make sure we get your comment. That's
Sure.
as simple as that. Like,
Sure.
that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah. All right, so that's that one. The second one I had on here is a little bit more substantive of policy. It's something that I had started talking about a few years ago, and it's inclusionary zoning. And I'm a little bit rusty, admittedly, on the inclusionary zoning concept, but how I understand it works is this. We develop a bylaw that mandates that a certain percentage of any new housing project that would go into, or housing development that would go into town would include a percentage of affordable housing. And I think it was on the sort of the fringes of policy over the past 10 years, and it's gotten a little bit more popular as time has gone on. And I was reminded of it recently when I was having a discussion with somebody around town about housing. And they didn't understand how a percentage of our subsidized housing inventory actually decreased over 10 years. But number one, they saw all sorts of housing that didn't used to be here. And number two, they knew that, yeah, we had added some affordable housing units in the course of development. Or not we, but the developers had. And the problem is over the past 20 years, there's been so much growth in this community that we just have not kept up with, you know, the percentage of affordable housing units that we're putting in. And this is something that would have to go to town meeting. It would have to be a bylaw. But I would like to work with Joe on this and maybe have Joe come in and give us his thoughts. And then have something go before town meeting maybe in the spring.
I would also just say include the planning board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a connected, Joe's a connected tissue to that.
I know, but also, you know,
I think we made one iterative step on this matter. I was gonna text them to see what he had, but, yeah, I think it's good.
One of the, I know one of the roadblocks to it was, there is a certain, how do I say this, back and forth with developers when they come before the planning board about things that they're willing to give up for things that we want. And when you add an affordable housing element in there, the feeling was, well, you know, does that remove a little bit of our leverage? Because right off the bat, the developer's gonna say, well, you know, I would give you a shorter roundabout, but, you know, you want this affordable housing, so I'm not willing to do that. So I am prepared to have that conversation, but I think that was sort of when I was on the planning board, the implicit message was, well, that takes away a little bit of our leverage to get other things that we think that we want. But we should have that conversation anyway, I think.
I think West Street is a good example, right? It's 57 units.
Mm-hmm.
They're all rental, they're not affordable.
Yeah,
And if you had an affordable component, but the economics for the gentleman doing the development just doesn't want to do it.
right.
You could do more if you could do some affordable.
That's right.
For his economy, if you had that bylaw, you could do it.
That's right.
So certainly for multifamily, it should be.
Absolutely.
So
At a
it would be a
minimum.
bylaw.
It would have to be, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I like to just, for goals stuff, work a little bit backwards in my head. So when we are putting things on the warrant for May, we'll have to have the language ready for late March, early April.
For our planning board hearing, for those guys, it's going to be December, January.
You're right, so this is something we'll want to hop on
Yeah.
fairly quickly, by maybe the end of September, start having a conversation with them. So maybe not this next meeting, but within the next 3 meetings that we have, invite the planning board in and invite Joe in to talk.
For that topic.
Yeah. All right, what else is down there for 3 stars?
Blackstone Bike.
okay, that was me. We haven't talked about it in years and years and years, but, you know, there's this big mythical thing in our county that at some point there's gonna be a bike path, and we talked about the South Grafton, you know, tying into the
rail
Complete Streets
trail,
program
yeah.
there, the
Yep, yep,
rail
yep.
trail there. So I just want to put it back on our radar, and I know Worcester just opened up a visitor center along the bike path. Like, so I feel like other communities are moving forward with these type of things.
There's one in Lexington, people love it.
Oh, for
People
sure.
can't get off. Oh, it's
Yeah,
so
it goes from
good.
Chelmsford to
Yeah.
Boston.
Goes right through
Comes down all the
Arlington,
time.
Yeah, it's awesome.
No, I think a good bike path through town would help economic development. It would,
Yep.
you know, there's just a lot of things. So I just want to see where they are. So there's a ton of roadblocks to
Right.
it, clearly, because of public versus private property and all of those things. But I just want to get it back on our radar that it's a project that I think would be hugely beneficial to the town. And we should just, you know, remind ourselves what those roadblocks are, and maybe the timing's different, maybe there's more land's been acquired, or maybe we can solve it.
What's the history of it? When was the last time we talked about it, do you know?
It's been a long
It's
time.
5 years.
5 years or so.
Yeah, because the state just doesn't have the funding to do the takings. They want the communities to do the takings themselves inside their borders. So what I wanted Joe to do is just reach out to the neighboring planners and say, where do they think the logical endpoints are in their towns?
Sure.
And we'll start to build in from there.
Okay.
Some will be on street, because
Yeah.
they'll have to be. Some will
Right.
be behind railroad tracks or wherever they'll go, but always getting them back to the next community's perceived endpoint. You just build it as if it's there.
Sure.
Because it'll be there someday, it's just, but Joe's busy and that's a lot
Yeah,
of
it's a
stuff to do.
Yeah,
But that would be the concept I would build around.
Okay.
But we, Joe is big into that, I am too, I just don't know a lot of detail, but.
Right.
would it make sense, and again, I'm just throwing this out there, would it make sense for something like this to have a committee formed to work on this, or is this something that can only be done internally?
I think there's something with Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce, right? Isn't there a group that's already like doing it?
I probably, I
There
don't
may be
recall.
regional meetings,
Yeah.
so that's something I can find out, and if there's regional meetings, I'm happy to go.
Me too.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll let everybody know,
Yeah.
so anybody can go.
I just get it, there's only, so many hours in a day, and any way we can support Joe and support the planning department overall and trying to gather information for this. So that's why I went to committee
Yeah.
first, but yeah, regionally would be great.
I think,
If I may.
Yeah, but the visitor center has a guy
Just to-
that's there.
Just to say that the town has a lot of paths, both mountain biking, hiking, even horseback riding paths, trails and stuff, that I just, in talking with the Land Trust and Joe from Planning Board as well, there's, two separate data sets basically of those things. And the one the Planning Board has, needs some QA and stuff around, they're gonna get some CMRPC support behind to kind of just validate all those, make sure they're not on private property and trying to get that stuff ready. The person then trusts just upload their raw data to the website Trailforks, which I guess a lot of people use for that type of stuff, especially for mountain biking. So that raw data is there, and it lets the people that use them do things even like see could fix, to say, here's a tree down, so somebody can go in and clear it or whatever on that point, and try to consolidate and join those two data sets and try to get something going. It would probably be one of the first steps on, making a path. We can say, well, we have these paths here and here, how do we get them to join? That might be a thing to think about.
that's on my other sticky.
Yeah, because
Sidewalk
all the
trails,
subdivisions that were
connectivity.
required to be built, they're supposed to have trails. Some of them weren't built by the developer, some of them were, some of them aren't maintained because it's private property. Figuring out where they are and how they connect to areas of commerce was kind of the first goal, was to get them to commerce for economic development purposes. And then for other, exercise reasons, you can have them for other stuff. Start with the ones that go to commerce.
Yeah,
Because you actually can get from Brigham Hill from the Lions Club to Stop and Shop through the woods.
yeah, yeah.
It's not a good path, but
It's nice back there.
it is. It
Not
could-
this
it
time of
could-
year
it
because of the
could be better.
mosquitoes, but
Could be
it's a
better.
nice back. Yeah, okay.
So
Well,
with that,
Blackstone Valley, you know what? Mike Moore is big into that,
yeah, he was
right?
at an event there with me a couple of weeks
So maybe
back.
I'll contact Mike. I'll contact Mike and see where it all stands, if they're still meeting, what the next steps are.
All right, the other one I have down here, if you're asking me, it's bike racks throughout town. We had a grant program, we did do some bike racks. Library, Millbury Street School, 2 other places. Joe Layden got the grant, we had to install them. We can get them now, but there aren't enough. It was this you?
This is me.
Yeah. So they're doing.
Maybe it's
I don't see them
because I
being
live in
used as they are now, but there are a lot of bikes, and probably more now that we're fixing roads than there ever been.
Yeah, so maybe I just noticed because I live, off the center of town, but I see kids' bikes up against the Grafton Country Store, sprawled on the, on Grafton Common some days, or up against the gazebo, and I'm like, we need bike racks. So I just put it down. I'm sure we have a couple. I
Yeah.
figured the schools had one. I didn't realize the library did. That's great.
I can start with an inventory
So
for
maybe,
you first, and then
Yeah,
we can figure out where we want to go. The historic district can be tricky, even though I would consider a bike rack a public works project. They would
Mhm.
consider it,
Not historic.
defaming the common. So there's a balance there.
I
Not that you need
understand.
to know that
I understand.
landmine later on. Let's get an inventory of where they are. We can
I
do
would,
that.
There were bikes before cars.
yeah.
They what?
I would like
The
to,
big wheel on the
I would
front,
like to
right?
encourage biking and have more bike racks.
What'll really drive you crazy
Yeah,
though,
the playgrounds would be great.
you can put the bike racks there, the kids are just gonna, they're like
I
my
know.
kids, they're gonna leave them
That's
right
true.
next to the bike rack.
That's true.
The ones at the high school do get used.
Yeah.
They get used.
Millbury Street School, one kid uses it.
Yours?
Yes.
Start a trend, that's great.
He's trying. Lazy kids. No.
I didn't say
All
a
right,
word.
that's a small goal.
No, that's
Just,
good.
You know, it kind of goes along with the complete streets and the bike path and all that. I think there's a common theme here.
All right.
The other three is green, do you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Green energy sustainability goals / committee. I don't know who that was.
That
There's one that kind of goes with.
Oh, there's the same, so,
Yeah.
oh, that's,
There's a green,
You right?
maybe it's
I have
not,
one too.
Oh, yeah.
maybe it's not the same thing, but there's a green.
That sounds like it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can throw it together.
but that deserves
So
a
do you
four.
wanna-
Should have been the first one.
Yeah, that's 6.
So, no, go ahead, I just had a couple things on that.
Well, you know, for people who don't know, I'm the sustainability director for the town of Sutton. So we do not have a committee in Sutton, and it's a, you know, person of one who runs all the green communities, the MVP grant, you know, everything from LED light install to solar projects to everything in Sutton. And the town has been very progressive on, you know, looking for grants. And when I look for grants, you know, it's a win-win in sustainability, right? Because we're, you know, we're lowering carbon emissions, but I also look at it from, you know, municipal standpoint if we're saving money every time we do this. So I think that, you know, from where I sit, there can be more effort of this in Grafton, and in the sense of, you know, we could form a committee and have people really looking into, you know, more grants, more projects that are out there, things in, you know, the sustainability realm are changing all the time. I just learned something new this morning from DOER that I didn't know existed yesterday. And so, you know, it's hard to stay on top of this stuff and know what's out there. And, you know, I would be happy to even, you know, volunteer as a board member to sit on the committee if there was a need for one, or, I know, you know, we are green communities right now. We are, I think we're an MVP community too, right?
Yep.
You know, and there's action grant involved with that. So, and again, this all sort of falls under planning too, in Grafton, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I just, we have policies in place where, you know, whether it's, and correct me if I'm wrong too, because I don't know if Grafton has policies on, when we do measures for capital goals, for example, anything that is a green project gets weighted more. And we have, you know, just certain bylaws in place, or, you know, policies in place that say, like, we want anything in our facilities to, you know, meet these requirements, sustainable requirements when we build. I think we're doing that now. But I just wanted to bring up maybe putting together a sustainability committee, not a financial sustainability committee, so we can call it something else. But, and there has been interest in the community, because when I was running for the board, and my friends who supported me and know what I do for work, they said, oh good, you know, bring some of the work you're doing. Like, we have charging stations over there and electric vehicles and all sorts of stuff that we've gotten for free from the state. And Grafton's getting there for sure, but, you know, again, like, with limited staff and limited time, there's only so much. So it's not taking away from staff to do this, it's like, you know, adding support. And I'd like to see more of that done as a goal.
I'd also like to consider, I know we've talked about it before, using the Green Communities Fund and maybe having a grant, somebody on staff that can help write grants and help support the
Yeah,
green
yeah.
community.
So I do all of
as-
that in my role, but I'm
right,
the
so-
only sustainability manager in Central Mass. I mean, so
Right.
that's why I put committee, because I know, you know, if it could be a grant coordinator slash sustainability.
Yeah,
position.
I think we might as well, I mean, I'm not saying that that would take the place of the committee, I think the committee is still fine, but having some, if we are in a position, I know, we're not really able to add many positions, but if we could give staff help in supporting that role, I think we should at least
I wanna
think
add
about
the
it.
same thing. I mean, for as long, going back 15 plus years, Grafton's been talking about this type of position and looking at it being self-sustaining through the grants that are written
Yeah.
to offset the cost of someone to manage it, very similar to what you're doing with Sutton. I believe that that's something I think all of us at one point in time have said, around town, whether publicly or within smaller circles. And I really like to see how that would work out. Like, I think that kind of ties into some of the other components that we were looking at,
Yeah.
especially bike racks and stuff. I heard grant, okay, that's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
one.
Right.
So as I'm writing all this stuff down and just keeping notes of, so that I don't repeat myself, I don't repeat whatever it says, but also looking at grants for, what would it take for inclusionary design?
Right.
What aligns with that? This person who, their role would be that the
Right.
key person that assists, but then you're not putting the burden on, the existing staff.
Right.
So we've been talking about this, I should have probably written down grant administrator. Maybe
Yeah.
that would have done it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's sort of a weird goal, right? Because it's, it's Tim's show, and, if he can fit it in the budget with, such limited resources, it's hard. But I'm all in favor of that, for sure. The impetus behind my sticky is just this sort of knowledge that climate change scares me to death. And I'm frustrated by certainly the inaction on the federal level, and, maybe even a little bit of hesitancy to act on the state level, to the degree I think there should be. So a lot of the impetus is falling to local communities to just do what you can do. And one of the neat parts about doing what we do is, you start to talk to people around the state and other people in other communities. And I have a friend of mine in Newton, where they've got their own Newton Green Deal that they proposed. And, it's not to say pie in the sky stuff, but these are aggressive goals. So by 2030, that the town facilities are going to run on 100% renewable electricity. Well, good for you if that's a goal, that's fine. Adoption rate of electric vehicles, they've got from 2019 through 2050. Rate of home retrofits by 2050, all homes to be operating on renewable energy. 3,000, or this is a bigger city, but 3,000 additional housing units, 80 of them are apartments, at a certain square footage to be sustainable. So I would welcome a committee like this of like-minded people who are going to pursue, frankly, aggressive policies over the longer term, to get us from where we are in our environmental footprint to where we think we want to be, because this isn't theoretical anymore. This is urgent, and it has to happen. Either it's going to happen to us, or we have some say in the direction and the change, and the pace of the change.
Well, I don't know why my land acquisition didn't get more dots, because because I think it's important
Sure.
also for the town, because you can only buy it once, and when land comes up for sale, I feel like we should be aggressive in acquiring it if at all possible.
Agree.
All right, what else is
So back to the sustainability, is there more discussion needed, or is there a goal, a concrete
I'd like
piece?
to put on the agenda that we vote in favor of establishing a sustainability, which we'll probably call it something else.
Like an environmental?
Yeah,
Or
something like that.
green?
So writing a charge, so we need something.
Yes, I can write a charge.
Okay.
I can do that. So I attend conferences a couple times a year, and it's usually in the eastern part of the state, like Arlington or Cambridge or something that, do a lot with renewable energy and sustainability goals. And they have websites, Sustainable Arlington or Sustainable
Mhm.
Lexington. And so, we talked about, I think, Tim, you and I talked about Mass Save and just like educating people on retrofitting their homes. So it can also be, for the community, and we did a couple of years ago a solar program, things like that, where we're keeping this, and Sutton is as we all know, like a small suburban farm town, right? And it's really amazing how the small community has become so aggressive and so excited about becoming green, you know, and we have reduced our energy consumption by 35% in 5 years in our municipality. And I have received over $1 million in grants just from green communities. And then, so, you know, you take that funding, you buy electric vehicles, you buy LED lights for every single building. And so not only are we getting that money and doing these projects for free, but we're able to save money because you're using less electricity. So it's a win-win. So even people who, you know, are still saying there's no such thing as climate change, which I don't, you know, personally I don't know how you can, but, you know, this is also, you know, helping funding for the community. So, and I know I'm using green communities as an example. I know Grafton is a green community, but just having, you know, maybe looking at all the projects we want to do, like the LED lights is a big one that we're going to accomplish this year. But what about next year? You know, like what's the best ROI? What's the project that should be done next that's giving us the biggest bang for our buck? And, you know, having people having conversations about it, because there's not someone there 30 hours a week working on it, I think is a good thing to do. So just establishing the committee.
Yep, that'd be great. So if you want to write the charge, I'll throw it on the agenda and
Okay.
get it rolling.
And we can provide a detail from the past 10 years in terms of taking stock of things we've done. Like, there's no oil in any public buildings. You had oil in a lot of school buildings, there's no oil, it's all natural gas. Those are 56% efficient, they're now 89, 92%. You know, so there's things we've done not in a vacuum, because we wanted to reach all of the goals and the criteria under green communities for the reduction. So we've done a lot of those things. And a lot of the purchases we have now, we buy a lot of solar credits, and solar electricity is big for us. So there's probably a 30%, maybe a 35% reduction in our overall cost. I won't say the kilowatt hours are reduced, because buildings fluctuate, weather fluctuates, but on average.
Do we do net metering too?
Oh, yeah.
In the building? Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And then the aggregation thing, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah,
Right
that's a
now,
big
it's a
thing,
little
too.
higher than the
Yeah.
national grid rate, I shouldn't say it out loud, but.
is it green
for-
or is it?
You can buy green for
Yeah. Same
half
as
a
that.
mil more,
Yeah.
something like that. So people have that option, and we'll
Mhm.
promote that option.
Awesome.
So it saved people for the first 18 months you're in, probably $400 a year,
Right.
which is not a ton, but it's $30 a month.
Right. So, and I should have prefaced this by saying, I'm not saying that we haven't done anything in Grafton. I'm just saying that, you know, it's a goal that, very similar to the recycling committee I was on a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, outreach and education on this stuff too is,
Well, you remember with trash, the same thing with trash.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing with green
Oh, I
communities. We
remember.
couldn't, we did everything for green communities. There were 5 steps. The last
Yeah.
one was the stretch code, adopting the stretch
Yeah.
code, which is an energy code for buildings that were over 4,000 square feet. And we couldn't get it to town meetings. We had a board member who was like,
no.
it's gonna kill construction. So it never went forward. So we finally got it there, where we convinced him, convinced the rest of town meeting to vote yes. And so that was what, 4 years ago?
4 years
Ken?
ago.
And so we got one
Meanwhile,
grant
I'm just
last
taking
year.
$250,000 a year in
Yeah.
Sutton and, you know, so.
So there are hurdles. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Like we weren't thinking about it, we weren't trying it. There were
I know.
real obstacle. Trash was a huge obstacle, but that was a swing in revenue. And revenue was $425,000, and the reduction in trash tippage was like $170 million. You know what I mean? It's just like those are the small things that we did early on, and then we built on that with Honeywell and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But we need to continue it, so the
Yeah.
committee's a great way to go.
I'm putting a dot on trash because I feel like
Thank you.
we're going to have to talk about
Appreciate
trash
it.
at some point. You can't just avoid it.
Use your trash compactors.
Yeah.
No, garbage disposal, sorry. Just use your garbage
The
disposal.
stuff I
compost.
show up at 3 a.m. and
Compost.
think about.
Unless you're on a well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, don't do that. Don't wash your clothes on well either. No septic. Are there any other 3s or 4s?
Down here, we have sidewalk, we talked about sidewalks.
Sidewalk, trail,
Yeah, I mean, connectivity,
what was that?
yeah.
Which one did you say?
Just, you know, just thinking, again, anywhere we can put sidewalks, we should be putting sidewalks. We should take an overall look at how things interrelate and how to get to places of business, how to get to the parks, how to get to different neighborhoods, and use of trails as well as sidewalks. I mean, it's been a long-term goal for, we've always been thinking about it. It's just such a big nut to crack, but just to keep it on everybody's forefront.
Connected some, we're not the inventory, because I know Worcester Street was not ours, but.
Listen, now that
We're
school
forced to
started,
do
I'll
that.
get Luke back out there doing the rest of the sidewalks. He did a lot.
It's good.
Yeah.
Enough that Paul Canoyer was.
Well, it'll build a map, won't it? Won't it?
We already have them.
Oh,
Someone already quadrant with existing sidewalks. I don't know if it covers everything. What's his name, Scott Conway,
Yeah,
he did it.
oh, good.
Yeah.
So halfway there.
yeah, so
I think he
that's,
lives there.
that's,
He still uses work.
He gave it to us.
so, the next one that has 3, I think is also mine. Facilities manager, again, it's something that we've talked about for years, in terms of capital planning, or just having a better idea of having an individual. Again, it's another staff person, which we don't really have the money for another staff person, but this is another case where I think you can justify the expense with the money you save, like if you have somebody on top of maintenance, so somebody that their job is specifically to know all of the buildings in town in and out, and repair things before it becomes catastrophic, or that sort of thing. So I know we've talked about it before, so I just thought I'd bring it up again with this group. Let's see if anybody have any input or.
Well, I mean, we do have staff, the school has more than we have, but every individual is kind of the chief's in charge of his building. The
Right.
Cable studio would be in charge of theirs, so the fire department for their street station, but it would be nice because, like the library, that they're in a temporary facility, they have no light when they leave that building, because we look at it during the day, we don't know what it's like at night, but now I know I need lights out there, so Beth is coordinating with Andy to make sure we have lights, so I mean, it'd be nice to have someone that always stayed up on that stuff, but we triage, it's not like it doesn't get done.
No, I know.
We walk the buildings, we have the heat gun to see where the leaks might be, we do all that stuff annually as a preventative maintenance piece, and all of the HVAC units have the same preventative maintenance thing, so I think we do a lot of it, could we do it more thoroughly, but I don't know if I can justify any true dollars that would be saved by having one
Yeah.
person. I don't, so it's not gonna be cheap to have that person.
Right. No, I mean, I understand that chief takes care of his building, but again, he is a police chief. His
Right.
expertise is in enforcing the law. He might not necessarily know, I mean, he can tell if there's a leak or, but he wouldn't be somebody that could develop a maintenance management plan and make sure things were done on a regular schedule. I mean, he could and.
No, but we do, I'm just trying to, this physical structure has a heating system, has electricity, try to put LED lights in, change filters with the preventative maintenance plan. So I'm
Okay.
just trying to, we do that, so I don't.
Okay,
I think there was a perception for a long time that we didn't maintain our facilities, but if you look at the age of the facilities and the fact that you can still access and live in them without mold and without
okay.
dust and debris and facilities work, that's a testament to maintaining those things.
I see your point. It is an expense, and you've got to always wonder if adding administration is adding to something and taking away from it. I did always wonder, though, when we go to put the capital plan together, we meet with department heads, and they give you the list of capital needs. And like Jen said, you've got the chief, he's a police officer, and we've got Jay, and Jay is a superintendent, and these are both very smart men, but I don't know what they know about roofs and HVAC systems, and it's working. But I think where it's theoretically possible to entertain cost savings is the extent to which we could get out ahead of something before it breaks to have to replace it. But I know you said, I'm sort of going back and forth on this because I know you said all along, I could, we've got $2 million, $3 million, $4 million worth of capital needs. Give me $4 million, we'll go solve it tomorrow. So there's that part of it. The other part of it is, again, getting back to sort of the bigger budget picture. When we go back to people and ask them for more money, whether it's this year, the next year, or the year following, one of the things that we always hear is, well, why can't you consolidate services with, right? And as Pete is always pointing out to me, let's see if we can mow a lawn together. You know, let's see if like one person can mow the school lawn and, you know, the municipal center lawn. So, I do sort of go back and forth, and a facilities manager might be that person that could say, okay, this is what North Street Elementary needs this week, as well as the municipal center. This is my analysis of what all the HVAC systems are around town, what their useful life is, as opposed to having people who are less qualified do it. Or on the other hand, you could look at it and say, well, we do all this and get by without having anybody do it. And by the way, the problem with this stuff not getting done isn't that we don't have one person doing it, it's that we just don't have as much money as we'd like. So, I mean, in an ideal world, I would say, yeah, but I'm sort of torn.
Right, or the staff to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Craig always wanted someone to be an advocate for, this building's more important than that building, we're gonna do this building, and tell you guys, hey, we're doing this building.
Right.
I don't know if you're ever gonna get that person or 5 people to agree with that one person.
Right.
What you do.
Right.
Because the school is gonna be the priority, broken windows are gonna be the priority. They're not, there's things that are not gonna get done, so we can do those things, because it's just, that's the thing you have to do.
So I think, Tim, it might be the last one over there.
Facility master plan?
Yeah, so that kind of goes along with this. Like, do we have any sort of facility master plan where we're looking at, you know, long-term of what buildings need and a prioritization of, you know, I mean, except for if we have broken windows or something like that, but do we have a plan in place that, you know, you follow or?
Yeah, everything has a useful life. So all the new windows
Yeah.
in the municipal center, they were 50 years old, were replaced now. So those are replaced, those are airtight, they're checked. I hope every time they dust the sills, they're making sure that caulking is in place. I mean, there's those, you know, kind of checklist things, and then repair if necessary. But in terms of replacing, we don't plan to replace until we know the useful life is over. So the gym roof has never been done. And we know that useful life is over. We need to budget and plan for that. So yeah, but there are things that will come up that was before the useful life. There was a boiler in the chief's in the police station, right? And
Yeah,
we had to replace it.
right, okay.
So
And the gym roof has been on the capital plan for 2 or 3 years now, but it's not leaking right now. So when it comes time to do the capital plan, there are roofs that are leaking right now, or boilers that are broken, and just,
Right.
you know.
I think what may also assist with that analysis is, and it's premature to really bring up in particulars because we haven't agreed yet, but, you know, take into consideration of what a new capital bylaw would do for the town, where it addresses and advocates for this type of data to be centrally located and managed throughout the whole town. So that way, any one person can go and look, find out specifically where on this priority is this listed and what are the risks inherent in not doing it today. So to Becca's point, if the gym roof at the municipal center is, you know, past its life expectancy, then you know that that's going to be a priority, but they might say, hey, we need to get by for a year, right? So something else might come up.
so we'll patch it.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, so, and that may lend to solving some of these other sustainability, I'm going to use that word, so, you know, some of these sustainability questions out there today, and have a more defined rubric to that analysis, that everyone has to participate in this type of analysis, and then having 5 independent people also provide with their background, with their various expertise to give adequate input where they may say, hey, this project over here would be people, I should say that one, but North Grafton Fire Department, that's got to supersede almost everything else. Why? Because they're going to get the building. That's not really what's happening, but I'm just giving an example. And that's how that would function. I don't have the particulars or how the mechanics work yet, because we haven't decided, but that's something that may assist with some of these other things in the community.
And one of the other reasons this is critically important is to people in the community, it's all money. I don't have a capital taxes bank account and an operational taxes bank account, right? I get a tax bill and I pay it. And, you know, when we focus on things like overrides, what we're talking about is our operational expenses. And we tend to pay for capital improvements either out of free cash or when they get too big, we do debt exclusion overrides. And I think what kind of sometimes frustrates people is, well, you they just see their taxes go up, right? And they lose track of, you know, whether or not something was operational or capital. It would behoove us, I always thought it was really hard to go back to people and ask them for more money without knowing exactly what the capital outlay is gonna be over the course of 5 years. So having some sort of capital master plan that we are, and I know we do this, but I did prefer the way that Peter had described it to me, with the point system and the data management and that sort of collaborative effort, in order to tell people like, okay, look, this is what you can reasonably expect over the next 5 years. You've got a couple fire trucks, school gym roof, parking lot, all these things are gonna be coming up, just so you know that when, you know, we're coming to you for override money. You know, I don't wanna scare anybody out of, you know, an obligation to pay more, but I do think it behooves us to be very transparent about that, so that people just don't get frustrated with us and see the costs and not the benefit of what it is we're
You
doing.
know, every time we add a new building, and you've always said this too, every time we add a net new building to the town, you know, there is overhead that we have to account for going forward. So as we keep, you know, adding on to these buildings and we do something with them, I mean, I can think of a couple right now that, you know, we've added recently that eventually this town community is going to have to plan for whatever capital needs they're going to need, whether it's 20 years, 30 years down the road. It's like we're kicking a can down the bucket, you know, down the road a little bit. But years ago, I mean, before you hear, there was a big discussion about having a joint, for example, joint public safety building, fire and police and same building. The town didn't want to do that, so in my opinion, the town decided to build two separate buildings, and they kind of accepted the fact that, okay, we're going to have
Right.
more capital requests over time to manage these facilities.
Right.
So if we bring that, and that discussion item was brought up many years ago. I remember sitting at a very contested town meeting about, or the idea behind this, and a lot of people just thought it was a bad idea, and they decided to do two separate things versus one thing.
Right.
Pros and cons to every decision we make, but one of them is every time we add a building or add an asset to this town, there is some
Consequence.
there's a consequence, and there's costs that are going to be associated with any other business that adds any type of capital to their,
Right.
you know, to their list of assets.
Well, the 3 asset liabilities we just got off our books, right?
Right.
I don't know which ones we've added, except for high school, it's the only one I can go to, but South Grafton Community House shifted that in complete burden away from the town. The new cable studio, police station, complete off of our books. And then One Grafton Common, the biggest one of them all, that was a problem for us to run on a day-to-day basis, is not us.
Right.
What is it?
South Grafton Library.
Yeah, that was my first one.
I thought you said community.
Oh, that's this one, I'm sorry, then I misspoke, you're
What
right.
you meant, but yeah.
South Grafton Library, so there's 3, so they're contracting, and I mean, thank God for Skip and the people who take care of this place. So we come in here
We don't
maybe once,
really do much.
twice a week, just to make sure it's,
The volunteers. was-
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the fire station that we own, when I get here, wasn't even insured by the town, by the way, that Skip maintains 100% of. So I mean, we've tried to limit it on those 3 instances. And, you know, we could take credit for putting the school in the fire department, but we won't do that.
But, you know, these are things you've always brought up, and you've been very clear about, hey, when we do this, we're going to have to plan for this at some point. So, I mean, we do have these discussions.
Right.
What I was trying to do.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, for a goal piece, if we go back to a goal, we have the capital plan, and we know we have, I'm gonna make up a number, $900,000
Mhm.
to do $3 million worth of projects.
Right.
If you all think that $3 million is the right number you should be spending, do the 9 out of the free cash, and then if you don't get a grant, you have to ask the voter for the difference.
Right.
So if you want to prepare them, we can set that up just like that.
That might not be a bad idea. You know, one of the things that Matt often keeps bringing up is, you know, on a yearly basis, the amount of money we take out of free cash to do capital is about this, you know, 900,000, $1 million, $1.1 million, but the budget keeps growing, so that means we're doing as a percentage of our budget less and less on capital. And what we know from everybody who ignored capital in the 90s was that just eventually that adds up, right? So you're never done with capital. I mean, people hate it when we said that, you know, what else is there? There's always something. Oh my God, there's always something. At this very moment, this building is, you know, less secure than it was when we started this meeting. That's how it works. Things, you know, things fall apart. Yeah, right. It's just, there's always something. You know, fire trucks are just god awful expensive. And then we have, you know, we can't even figure out like what's capital anymore with school stuff. Like computers used to be capital, now they're books. You know,
It's,
yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting.
So agreeing on those definitions, I think, is important, because they weren't
Yeah,
at one
it
point,
is
now
huge.
they are.
It is
So
huge.
that-
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we'll have to tackle that.
Yeah. But I think a lot of what that committee's doing is I go back and kind of circle back a little bit from when we were on. It is addressing some of those things, and I'd be eager to see how it comes together, see how it would fit in some of these goals.
Okay.
Facility manager was yours, Jen, leading
Yep.
this discussion. So what do you think, like, short-term, long-term discussion continues, or? like-
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just to bring things to talk about. I mean, sometimes we're gonna talk about some of these things, and we can't do every single thing immediately.
Right.
It's just something to keep in the back of our head,
Yep.
that, you know, at
There
some
was
point.
a grant for, the community compact offered a grant to Southbridge, and they did a facilities analysis. It's a pretty robust report.
Mhm.
We could apply for a grant for that purpose, and
Yeah.
I don't know what we'll learn. I mean, we only look at what we look at, so if they look at
Yeah.
things that.
I know, plans and reports, right, it's only, you do some things and it depends what
Yeah,
you
we're
get out
gonna
of
be
it.
committed to it.
But, I mean, mainly I was thinking too, like when I was managing parks, we had maintenance management plans and we put everything, every man hour, you know, you would put like by time of year, you know, just there'd be tasks every week, every day that had to be done. Some were daily, some were weekly, some were monthly, some were once a year. And you know, it was just a way to keep track of it. And it was like things like cleaning the gutters or sharpening the blades on the mowers. You know, like it was just, in a park system, it just got very detailed. But it was an entire, so I would develop this maintenance management plan in which, you know, we would go through. And so kind of in my head, I'm just like, and I'm sure they're doing it. It might not be written out and they may not have charts and graphs and all of that. I'm sure they're like, I'm sure the Parks Department is like, okay, it's time of year, we
Yeah,
turn the
so
water
this-
off and the sprinklers,
Change-
you know,
change the oil in the truck, do
change,
the brakes.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure they're doing all of the tasks. It was just a way to track it and to make sure things were getting done. But again, it's just like when you own a house, you know, certain things, you know, you might want new carpet, but your roof leaks, so you have to fix your roof, you know, same thing. Like, it would be nice to have somebody really take a deep look into our buildings, but I understand that, you know, in terms of where we spend our money, it may not make it to the top end. We may have other places that it's more important, and that's
It's
fine.
like our master plan. I mean, all well, best laid plans, right? You know, here we
Yeah.
are, we have this wonderful idea about what Grafton needs to be, but we have to somehow fit that into what our availability of funds in order to proceed with that master plan.
Right.
That's why people usually have this chip on their shoulder, right, saying, well, we've done this master plan, but we haven't really done it. It just sits on the shelf and collects dust and so on and so forth. It's because of, to your point, I mean, community understands that there's a lot of priorities that we need to be able to fulfill. And I always feel like we're gaining some traction in some areas, and in other areas we seem to take 3 steps back in some areas. So I think the plan's a great idea. Maybe if we can look at a facilities grant for us and put it on the future agenda about what would it take to apply for it if these even exist. I think it's a start.
Oh, to do the study?
It's just a start.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea too is if you can identify something early enough and replace it or fix it to a point where you don't need to replace it to a point where it's not going to cost so much
Or
money.
just do maintenance on it.
Right, that's a cost saving.
Yeah, we do that with cars, right?
Right,
It costs
exactly.
$70 a year to maintain.
Exactly,
I think you're right.
right.
Yeah. I think we're down to the twos.
What do we have to, oh, here you go, railroad. What else were you going to
Oh.
say?
I was just gonna say railroad.
Do you want one?
No.
That would be a great rail trail.
It-
It would have been.
Wonderful.
So,
You had a chance to buy it.
I was, and we should
Yeah,
have,
we
and
did.
I was not
So-
able to influence the decision.
so I wrote this down,
Points.
based on the email the board received today, you know, and again, you know, I know there have been a lot of discussions with the railroad. The most recent one, you know, with the improvements and residents coming before the board talking about quiet zones. And so I put railroad as a discussion because this is something that should not go away. They're very, you know, there are people living on Waterville Street in that area who are not happy. And I don't know what the solution is, but I think, I see my position as, you know, I want to advocate in their favor. And I want to speak up about the fact that 30 horns are being blown because CXX is bringing too many cars in and they're moving them back and forth. And, you know, my thought is it's the railroad's obligation to talk to CXX and say, you can't do this, we don't have the room, we're going through neighborhoods and in residential areas, and I know we don't have a lot of power there, but I don't want to do nothing. So we can talk about off record right now, conversations that have happened, what we want to do about it, can we do anything about it, but this is being brought up from, you know, citizens of this community, and it bothers me
But
that
they're legitimate.
people want to sell their homes and leave the town that they grew up in because there's horn blowing at 4 in the morning every single day. It's not right.
So it's not even the propane coming in, because it's coming in from the other direction.
Right, it's not the propane.
It's not the propane,
No.
it's the other,
Yeah.
It's other material.
it's
And
other
the-
material.
The only thing we can do is we've asked, I reached out to Mike at your direction relative to the transportation bond bill to do the gates for the quiet zone and the signalization of the 3 lights on 140. Until we do that, there's not a whole lot.
But they
we
can
can do.
legally block a road. They
Yeah.
can't they can
Why?
legally
No,
block.
they can't.
To move cars as a rail, they can do that. They can.
That just
That's-
seems wrong.
So why do they have so much material coming in?
They say they're a common carrier and they can't regulate time or items of business to be transported on the rail. They're citing an 1800 law, I get it, we fought it. McGovern sat at those desks, at the tables with us in the school auditorium. You know, I'm like, just propose it for, you know, anybody who buys a railroad today, limit them.
Right.
Right? So limit this guy. No one wants to deal in Congress with railroads. No one at the state legislature wants to deal with this one. And I feel like I'm copping out, but I don't have a good answer. I don't have any, other than going through that process I mentioned with the transportation bond bill and setting up the quiet zone. In the short term, there's nothing we can
Then
do.
I want to go through that process.
Oh, yeah, well, no, we
Yeah.
are. I mean, we gotta get
Alright,
the money.
good.
It's gonna be $600,000-700,000.
Is that something where we can, what about quiet zones in other parts of town where the tracks cross the roads?
It's still a process, still have to be gated in most cases.
Okay.
We made Becca went through this with the MBTA on Prenter's Place. Can you talk about that, just so they have some context?
Place.
Was it not? Parmetta's Crossing?
Prentice Street, is it Prentice Street?
Parmetta's Crossing.
Parmetta's Crossing.
Yeah.
that is it. There's a lot of rules that the FOA has. That would happen to be too close to the MBTA station, and they won't let you put a quiet zone if you're within so many miles of a station, because it's a safety issue. There's pedestrians at stations, so it's all doable. I know lots of towns who have done it. You just have to make sure that you fall within the parameters that the FOA has set. And then there's an application process. So that one we couldn't do, but, I mean, the one at, Route 30 and Waterville, we can do, but it requires the full gates, because of.
And pedestrian gates, too,
Yeah.
because they don't want people
Yep.
walking. Because they lose the flaggers.
So it's a cost, you still have to make application, you have to make joint application, which they said they would do with us, but it takes time. I mean, if there
Well,
are
we
other
need the money to
locations that
we
people-
need the money to coordinate the signals first, because you need the preemptive devices to stop traffic before it makes the right into the gates or into the moving train. And I also need it for public safety purposes to get through all 3 lights, either north or south. So those preemptive signals are both serving the rail and public safety. They're never obviously going down East Street or Waterville in that instance, but because there's a train, but they can pass north and south. That coordination of those 3 lights is where the money is, and that's what we need the money for. And I can't get the quiet zone until I get those things in place.
Okay.
And that's where Mike Moore comes in,
Yeah.
on the delegation themselves.
Okay, that leads us to
I wish
Nice
I had
segue into legislative priority list.
That's a good segue.
Yes, right?
Who wrote that one?
Me.
I'm on the legislative committee for CMRPC, so that's good.
Yeah, so what I thought would be helpful is to be able to have them come in maybe once or twice a year and talk about legislative priorities for the upcoming session. You know, what is a little bit frustrating sometimes is when it's difficult to respond to the public about something that they're upset about. For instance, this past week with marijuana, you know, a lot of people sort of have an expectation that when you come into conference room A, there's going to be a problem that they have and we're going to solve that problem. Not understanding that, you know, we're sort of just cogs also in a larger scheme. And a lot of what we want to be able to do is dependent on state law and state funding. So there are any number of times where I feel like, well, you know, there should be a law about something, or there should be this issue raised in the general court. And then I thought, well, why don't we do that? You know, if we could work with our representative and our senator to either sponsor legislation or have something, an issue that we want to speak to them about or we want to have them address. You know, educational funding always jumps out at me. You know, we are part of, I think, 80% of Massachusetts that was basically ignored at the last education reform funding go-round. I understand that, I more than understand the urgent need in gateway cities for what they're going through and the needs that they have with their population. But we're essentially the middle class of Massachusetts that is not getting the dollar value back. Used to be, when Proposition 2.5 was passed, it was a check on our ability to pass through costs on to the consumer, and the state was going to come in and make up the difference with whatever it is we lost in income from Prop 2.5. But as time has gone on and the generation that passed that law has died off, nobody remembers that part. And so every year, state aid as a percentage of our budget goes down and down. And it's just, it kills me when, you know, guys get to come to town meeting and say, oh, you know, we got $600,000 more for you. Well, it sounds like a big number, but it's a teeny tiny portion of our budget. And oh, by the way, no new taxes this year. Yay, hooray! But we're screwed. You know, we're the ones that are going to raise people's taxes. I just, you know, I feel like at least once or twice a year, more than the meetings that we have with these guys, if we could come up with a list of items and topics that we want to see addressed in the session, that would go a long way. For instance, Tim, you were talking about local option income tax. That's not presently state law. You know, if we could get Dave behind sponsoring a bill on that, that might be something to pursue. You know.
He doesn't want to tax a tax, though. That's what he told me.
Yeah.
Well, not to kick you while you're down, but those communities that are gateways,
Yeah.
they have excess levy capacity, so they can charge their residents.
Right.
We can't. We're
Right.
stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Lowell, Worcester, they have excess capacity,
Right.
they can raise taxes.
That's right. Boston too.
No,
It's amazing. it's the amount of wealth that flows
the other
through
thing,
that
I mean, that's just probably a separate legislative goals thing, but, you know, exempting from 2.5 fixed cost increases or snow and ice overages. So
Yep.
budget 150, if it's 300, give us credit for the 150.
Right.
Don't make me hit that ceiling more quickly.
Right.
Exempt those small things that operationally, we're not
That's
trying to
right.
hurt anybody, we're just trying to get by. But that 150 is coming out of the school, coming out of stabilization, coming out of free cash, coming from someplace.
Right.
But just making it exempt so we can just go up.
The little transportation costs locally too. I mean, I know it's a hot button issue, but these things add up over time. You know, I'm not saying that these services should go away. I'm saying that somebody else should pay for them.
Right.
And it should be a more equitable distribution of how that happens, because we tax people in the worst way possible, you know, based on, you know, property value, which is just a regressive way to do it.
So I think that, you know, bringing legislative, the kind of way I envision it, and I'm glad you explained it to me, but I envision it something that we may send a letter on behalf of us to our representatives or government.
Sure.
You know, so we've done that several times, previous board line, where we sent numerous letters of saying, hey, Chapter 70 Foundation review, please implement the changes. This is going back to 2015. And, you know, those are the things that we would send, or we'd send information or comments regarding some legislative changes that might impact whatever our operations were currently. So I kind of feel that this board, the select board doesn't necessarily do that in this town. I see other select boards who've written letters to their legislators saying, hey, we as the executive board in this town would really like to see support for this initiative,
Right.
for these following reasons. And
Right.
they take that as input, saying, hey, look, I've got 3 of my select boards in my district that
Right.
want this.
Yeah, we're on the record.
It goes on the record, correct. Like, I would feel like any one of us, I think, should be an advocate, you know, not only collectively, but independently, if you feel that there's some legislative initiative that you feel it should be brought forward, and that we as a board should take up as a discussion and take a vote for a resolution and send correspondence, I think it's something we should have.
Yep.
And
What form would you want it, I mean, if we were to do this, say we were to put something together yearly, right, and start something. So if we want to do it yearly, the session starts when exactly, someone remind me, is it November?
That was January.
January?
Starts in January, it's usually after.
Okay. So suppose we want to do something in December, we might say, okay, you know, everybody bring in your ideas for contributions to this correspondence and say this, we'll make that announcement in December, and then maybe by one of the meetings in December, formulate something that we can put into deliverable form, and then I'll sign off on after we vote on it. Would that be cool? Okay.
I think that's a question, and pardon my ignorance, but Mass Municipal Association, do they do a fair amount of lobbying on
Yes.
behalf,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they do.
So maybe getting their, I should get something of this, or that's my fault.
I have the legislative priority list, and we get, and these guys meet. These guys, every day I get something from them, I forward along to both the delegation, to Mike and to David, and they're on board, they vote for it.
Yeah, but I also think just getting a letter of support, or maybe opposition, depending on how we feel.
Right,
Especially
right.
this community. You know, I think gives a reinforcement that I see like Shrewsbury do. I've noticed that they have done that in the past for certain things, not everything, but can't remember off the top of my head what exactly they were, but there were some things I think that were changing some laws that affected economic development. It could be used, you know, along those things, and again,
Right.
hold
And
one
CMRPC has the legislative delegation too, that does the committee work, that forwards things along to the executive committee that they want to see get supported. So melding those together, I try to coordinate what they're doing for Worcester County with the MMA, so they all know, because sometimes even regional planning agencies don't always talk about their priorities.
Sure.
They don't always align either. But
So I would envision it very similarly, that if there's one specific thing that we would want to bring up, or if there's something from MMA that we would like to say, hey, on behalf of Grafton, the executive board, this is how we feel.
Sure.
We would like to say.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's real, doesn't take much to do your reading ahead of time.
Right,
It's
yeah.
not, you either agree with it or disagree with it.
Yeah, we have a voice in this stuff, and why not use it?
Yep,
Yeah. Okay.
we are voicing.
so exempt snow and ice, is that what we?
Yeah, that's gonna be better.
You know what,
Yeah,
Tim,
for
if
sure.
that is the first thing that you would like to do, and I'm all open for that, if you feel that that is
It'd
something.
be a mild winter, watch this.
That's not what the almanac is saying. It's saying it's gonna be a tough one. Well, in my opinion, it's gonna be a great one. I love when it snows. I know you don't.
It just costs money.
But I think if that's the first thing you would like to see, then I would love to see, like, you know.
I want you all to love to see. You're gonna be the strength in this letter.
But that's my point.
All right,
is-
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have it written on a whiteboard someplace in that building.
In the twos?
Oh, so, speaking of plans, I did have developed a new master plan. And I'll tell you why. So, there's a lot of little stuff, you know, smaller picture things that we do. Sometimes I do get worried that we do lose the forest from the trees at times, and it causes things to move a little more slowly that maybe ought to be priorities. I know Joe, not to make this meeting a to-do list for Joe, but Joe has a vision of economic development in the gateway portion of Grafton as well as Route 30 and in South Grafton. And there are, for instance, zoning changes that have to happen along there. We have development projects that we would appreciate in affordable housing. We have initiatives in recreation and open space. And we all end up in these committees and we work as little fiefdoms for our projects very hard. And it would be great if we could pull together for just one sort of unified, consistent vision of what we see big picture wise. And of course, you know, on the ground level, the details are going to vary from person to person, committee to committee, and what actually gets done might be a little bit different than what's on the master plan. But I think that cohesive vision of where we see this community being, you know, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, environmentally as well, you know, all these things could be helpful. And I know that it stalled last time. We were talking about this 5 years ago because I think the price tag was like, what, 150 grand?
Yeah, to do a proper one. I mean, the charter charges the planning board with doing the master plan,
And
but
isn't Joe
there hasn't
working
been a lot of, on this board at the time, years ago, not a lot of support to do another
Right.
master plan. I will tell you that all of the items in the last master plan reads like a checklist of things to do, which is not what a master plan should be, but you've done 95% of those things.
Right.
So it did collect dust for a long time, but a lot of those things are checked. But you do need to get to the vision of what the community looks like.
Right.
From sidewalks
But it is on,
to
it is
facade.
on Joe's, I mean, I
Yes,
feel like I've
it is, but
had
it's really
many
on the planning board.
conversations,
It's really, it
yeah.
spells it out in the second.
I just sort of
Sorry,
remembered that,
John.
I remembered that discussion, and I remembered sort of being, I understand that there was a cost associated with it, but, you know, there were moments when this board, by virtue of its just sort of status, can, you know, encourage people to move in one particular direction with it. I think, was I on the planning board at the time? I might have been. And the feeling was sort of like, well, we could push this, but it's not going anywhere. You know, it's not going to have the larger.
Yeah, you might not have a lot of support.
Right.
No, I mean, this, I see this as kind of like a mini master.
Yeah,
You're gonna-
right.
You'll have these things to work on this is your focus. This is what you're gonna come up with. This is gonna be your guidebook for the next 18 months. Same thing with the master plan, but for 20 years.
Right.
But
You should be.
encouraging planning to have a master plan.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, maybe that'd be something we take up with them if we
Maybe
need
we
them.
can talk about it when we talk about inclusionary zoning.
Yeah, I think it's a good
Yeah.
idea, yeah.
Could the master plan be considered a capital item and buy it that way, the capital plan?
Mm,
It's more philosophy, it's more like vision. But yeah,
Six-
it could be
Funding it,
considered
you're
capital
curious
plan.
about funding, it's gonna be 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? If we're gonna use free cash
Yeah.
for a warrant article or for capital,
yeah.
it's not, it's weird because we want to set these buckets to put things into so people can look at them cleanly through a lens, but then you have the charter and democracy where any group, any 5-member board can submit an article dealing with money, dealing with capital, dealing with any matter. So we're never going to limit that because that's a core fundamental. But you're trying to put it in buckets and then hopefully you have that
Right.
coordination with those other fiefdom folks to make sure that we are all going in the same direction. So either way, you can do it either way, but it'll probably end up being a warrant article just because somebody will want to be in charge of it, like the planning board, because they're the people in the charter that's designated to do that work. And they should advocate for it. They should advocate for it. They should want it.
Democracy. Do someone else's, because I don't.
And then,
I
that's
don't.
it. So one of the others, maybe this, I think.
So, yeah, this one, within regards to economic development, you know, come up with the measured goals for developing new sources of revenue. And I
Right.
have another one that kind of dovetails into that, which is also come up with measured goals to assist with existing businesses and grow their opportunities as well. So right now, I mean, I look at those, I don't see it really, really follow, other than the initiatives and just some of the things that they're doing for holidays that are coming up, and they're doing things promoting existing businesses. I really want to see measured goals as to what is the intention, like what type of participation are you looking for with the use of economic development, and then the other side of it, and they both got 2,000. So the other one is to actually look at, you know, to Tim's point, what are development opportunities that we could, and then measure goals about the activities that go towards that. So right now, it kind of seems like, you know, it falls into place.
Right.
Kind of like, you know, people back into a spot. I like to see us be able to drive forward.
Right.
And really say, hey, activities A, B, C, and D are having this intended result that we can measure for this outcome.
So we would have to come up with the measurables.
So I don't think we would have to come up with the measurables. I would think that, when I brought this up, it's to have a discussion, perhaps very similar to the planning board, if I'm not surprised, we talked about economic development, and say, can you come up with some measure goals? And then tell the community, like, what is economic development doing? How are you measuring the success of your activities?
Can you give an example, because that's a very
Yeah.
I don't know what that statement is.
Well, I guess
I
it's
don't
true
quite
with any, I
understand
guess
what you're
it's true with
saying.
any of the goals.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't come up with the action items, that wouldn't be what I would do, it would be for economic development to do that. But right now, if I ask anyone in economic development, what are your measured goals, how do you measure them? I'm gonna get like 6 different answers. Okay, and I have gotten different answers, like I've gotten different responses from different people. So I feel that if we bring them in and say, if you can come up with how, how are you measuring your objectives to meet economic development goals?
Right.
I mean, that's all I'm looking for. I think
But
it's
can you
pretty
give me an
straightforward.
objective and a goal? Like, again, you're talking in
No,
terms that
I
I'm
won't
not.
do that because that's up to economic development to do that. So in other words, I don't want to put words in your mouth and say, hey, do activities A, B, and C. I don't see it.
Okay, so I'm on EDC. So if I were to say, and I'm making this up, but if I were to say my goal is to get, a hotel in front of Wyman Gordon, okay, and that's a goal, and we're working on, we put together information, we had a study about it, like a study would be a measurable, right? So like we've hit that goal. What's the next thing we do after that? Is that what you mean, like breaking down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really like
Yeah.
taking a goal and then breaking it down, almost like in outline form of what the steps are to achieve that goal, and make sure that all those check marks are being addressed in
So
order.
essentially, like, what is economic development strategic plan?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Right.
okay,
I don't know what that is.
yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting because, from what I'm learning, it's sort of a two-pronged committee, right? Because we have local businesses in town that we're trying to support, retain, and then we also have economic development where we want to attract new businesses, more industrial and commercial businesses into the community. So that's something to keep in mind too with this goal, because they would be different.
Which is why I wrote 2 different
Yeah,
ones,
good,
but they kind of
okay.
go together in some aspects. So I think we do a really great job on retaining business and marketing what we currently have. Like I see a lot of that in the community throughout the year. I just recently have seen, through Tim's office, and I think it was over the spring when you had those informational meetings, and you had those placards over like, here's X amount of millions of dollars worth of revenue undeveloped land. So, coming up with action items that we can measure, hey, are these action items actually working for us? If not, then what is it that we have to change? To your point, perhaps they're milestones, I don't know, whatever it is that you want to call it.
Yeah,
it's not
okay.
me. But to have a definitive strategic plan to think, how are you measuring getting to that point? Instead of, it's Wednesday, it's economic development day, it's gonna be
Like spaghetti.
what? Yeah, it's spaghetti, translate, right? So that's all I'm trying to get, with the reason why I wrote that out there, and I feel that as executive board, I think we should encourage that they have something in place.
Well, I'll take that on if you want, because I can have a conversation with John Allen and see, what has already been put into place. And, like I said, I'm new on the committee, but I can find out, maybe more specifically to report back what are the goals and what are the current measures right now, and we can, discuss if we want to, go into more detail with them, or I can go back to the committee and answer more questions.
I think you should talk to John, and that's fine. I'll just tell you just from a global perspective, for the 7 priority development sites that we have identified on those placards, in terms of the steps, the strategic steps, it's just constantly promoting those sites, and whatever inexpensive means that we have to do that is how we do it. So whatever they may be. If he's going to a conference, he's holding those things, he has his banner that he puts up, he's the face that goes with telling the story about biotech on Tufts. So that's, but I can't, until someone buys 660,000 square feet of permanent space, I don't have a thing. I'd rather have your goal be, Tim, you got 7 sites, in 2 years, that's 3, in 2 years, develop 2 sites. We don't care which one, get them developed.
That is the tricky part about this, because, you know,
That's what I want to be careful of not doing.
each of us, I think, over the past couple of years, you know, to a certain extent, we all campaign and we all talk about economic development as a priority, but I think it leaves people with the impression that we can directly affect economic development. So when people say, oh, can you believe they are putting that there? Who's the they? We don't put anything anywhere. There are people that have private property, and we can put into place the conditions for them to develop that property commercially, but that's all we can do. We can market it, we can zone for it, but at the end of the day, it takes somebody willing to say, okay, I'll make the investment of millions of dollars and go in and we'll cordon off that part of Lyman Gordon, or we will develop the Bolak property in North Grafton. And, you know, so the goal can't be that specifically, because that's not really us. All the goal can be is, okay, we're going to attend this conference, we're going to market it in this way, and we think that will attract somebody. And if a year from now it still hasn't, let's recalibrate and think about what we're
Think of a
going to
new
do.
activity to do
Right.
that, right, so you don't want to keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, hoping for a different result if something isn't happening.
Right.
So it gives the committee and the economic development coordinator kind of a license to make adjustments. And
Right.
say, hey, we are measuring this is what we're doing, and if something isn't working, you know, maybe come to us and say, hey, I could really use whatever, another $20,000 to do something like this. But at least they can share with the community when they ask for funding to promote existing business or to develop a parcel or two within the next few
Right.
years. At least we have something we can tie back to, like, okay, here's the activities that are going to go towards meeting that outcome.
Just off the top of my head, Tim, where are we with that Bolak property in the zoning? Isn't
It's
that-
rezoned, it's all set.
It's all set?
Yeah.
Okay.
And somebody's allegedly heard through the grapevine that it's been sold, but I do not know that.
Okay.
But I just want to back up because I just want to make sure. The 7 sites we have, if you take Tufts, for example, in terms of a measurable goal, we don't market that property, we don't own that property, it was given to Tufts for their land from the state hospital, as you know. But one of the impediments we learned was it's under the legislation when it was transferred, it had to be a land lease. And the land lease could be up to 100 years. But we learned through, you know, things like Bright Sky and all these nice names for these advanced teams that come out and do site evaluation scenarios, that they don't want to lease, they want to own. So in terms of going back to the legislative goal, you know, we got to change that legislation. So that was like an iterative step that we pitched. Tufts doesn't want to take the lead on that. They want us to take the lead on it to get rid of that, to allow them to sell it. So there's that piece. The second piece, and I told Tufts that piece, but then I moved the goalpost a little bit more, because when Mass Development decided to break off, or when the state decided to break off the DYS property on Route 30 across from Anzio's, that 30 acres or 40 acres or whatever it is, and give it to Mass Development, a light went on in my head because it abuts the land of Tufts. Why not take it a step further and give that land back to Mass Development? Give it back to the state and let Mass Development, because it's been with Tufts for 15 years. And I love Tufts, I want them to be here. But nothing has happened. So you want to change course, get that land back to Mass Development. That's the answer to that. Not, you know, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Einstein, right? Let's not do that. Let's get it Mass Development. Let's let them do it, because that's what they do. Tufts University, great group. Do they develop parcels of land? Not too often, as we can tell.
So this would be
Yeah.
it would be a worthwhile conversation with economic development to get them on board with that. Because I think if we get that board on board and any other one that we have to do, then, you know, we are working together as a team to really push forward. That I totally agree with.
That sounds like something that would be a priority.
It's not going to be easy, because Tufts is strong. They
Right.
have a lot of lobby power.
They're not gonna let it.
If they're in, they were into it when I had the initial conversation with them in July, but last year. But they were worried that because they asked the state for money, what the perception is when they say we have land for sale. So they go, oh, we're giving you money, but you have land for sale.
Mm.
Even though, because no one knows the history in 1978 when the land got transferred for a buck. No one knows that it was state land to begin with, so it gets a little funky for
I
Tufts.
feel like they're giving the state too much credit there. I don't think anyone would notice.
Well, Tufts, you know, the upper echelon of Tufts thinks that, so their
Yeah.
perception is gonna rule because they wanna
Right.
get the
They're the
2
ones
million
that get
bucks
trouble. Right.
in their
They're
appropriation.
gonna notice now that we just mentioned it.
I've talked about it before, but just, I don't get a lot of traction, but
Okay.
it needs,
So-
I think it needs to happen.
If there, and this is exactly what I had no idea technically what had to occur. I was aware of that the issue was with leasing in that area, and yes, the only thing that went there was the DL3. So that would, you know, something that would have to stay, but then the rest of that contiguous land behind there that would connect to the adjacent parcels, right?
Yeah, to the development,
Yeah. I
Yep.
mean,
because that whole corridor is going to change, but that is a piece. And none of those 7 priorities that we have are any magic bullet for anything. They all happen at once, you're home free. Literally home free.
I do want to mention too, when we're talking about working with other committees and stuff, planning also plays a big role because of the bylaw changes. And so many of these parcels, we have asked the town to change their zoning to encourage development. I think moving forward with that is still, we
Yeah.
still need to do that.
absolutely.
Well, can I just, on your agenda, I mean, public comment, but what about committee reports? Like have them monthly or whatever the time frame is, I don't know what it is. They voted on it, some Board of Health gives you meeting minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what, we have to digest this, because you don't
Yeah.
have a lot of time, so just give us a report that someone can read, someone, you know, it's a clerk or whoever.
Like written committee
Yeah,
reports?
just have them, this is the report of the Board of Health.
Yeah, we
Or
had,
maybe it's not the Board of Health, but some committee.
we had them come in last year, over the course of the year, and it sort of, I felt like it got a little bit rote at some point. You know, they would come in, tell us what they're doing, sort of leave. There weren't a lot of questions. I was hoping to figure something out where it'd be a little bit more substantive.
Well, now you have these goals, you
Yeah.
set them down that road.
That's a good idea.
I don't know, it's just, I've seen it before where committee reports get reported out to you guys as the executive board, that's how it should be.
All right. That makes sense.
All right, down here, we have Super Park, there's no surprise there. It was torn down, and the new high school was built without a plan to replace it, so that is still on my list.
That's my dot on it, by the way.
Hmm?
That's my blue dot on it.
Oh, thanks.
So I know you don't want to do substantive policy stuff, but we need to know, because there's like thoughts about using that money someplace else that's appropriate, and I'm kind of going down a road, if we want to use it for something else, maybe it's an agenda item for the 3rd or the 10th, we got to get on the same page. We're using the money that's there now for this or for something else.
Again, my idea, let me just restate what that was to utilize that money for an immediate project that has to finish. It's crucial that we get money appropriated to the DPW facility, from what I understand. And I thought one way of doing that is that if usually you have some sort of contingency at the end of that project of what you were originally asking for, that whatever that residual would go back to, again, it would take time to vote, obviously, to go back to a project that was in planning in the first place. So what I was trying to do is think of the ways of lessening the burden of asking the community for more money. And I know we can do it through town meeting, not through the ballot. I thought of just a way to lessen the blow as much as possible, say, hey, we're trying to look under every rock that we have. So we're not asking to borrow another $1 million, maybe we're asking to borrow $680,000. So in my opinion, I think going from a 7-figure number down to a more reasonable 6-figure number is adequate, and I think that's reasonable. And then whatever residual, then we say to people, hey, our plan is, look, we took this money from this project over here. Our intention is whatever the residual we have left after the project, we go back to that plan.
But just so, I mean, we can have this discussion, I'm open to the discussion, but the residual for the high school project did not go to building the super park, which is why we are in this position now. So saying that the money left over at that project will go back in that, I mean, it's something
Well,
that we've been.
I like the
working on
idea,
before.
but just that there's a logistical thing, right? Because you borrow money, you can only use borrowed money for certain things. So if you only say you had $250 here, and you put that in an article just to finish the project, you would only have access to that 250 unless you reappropriate the total balance that might be left after the DPW was done. But then you would need a vote, and it wouldn't be excluded debt anymore. Because we learned that with the high school project, putting it towards the one after common.
Right.
So it's just, there's a little nuance there that,
I get that, and I think that when you look at the priorities and the limited resources that we have, and I agree with you, I was on the school board and I was an advocate of taking the residual of the money from the school building project and putting it in, and remediating the lost asset that this town had. In the first super park, where it kind of went a couple places and then just flat out kind of went away with other priorities that came on, and then we did a couple of other building projects. I think it was the fire station, that was totally, but then we had other priorities that, again, that took those funds. So it's something that I go back even years ago when I said, hey, this is a great idea. There's people have been raising money for it. I see people have donated to this. I don't want to lose track of people's effort. At the same time, I think if we go to town meeting and ask for $1 million, and let's say that fails, let's say that doesn't, then what's our plan B? And I worry about that. I think an easier sell is one of my idea, and potentially looking at one of the funding sources that Becca had mentioned, but we weren't quite sure yet, $125,000 for the LED project. Did I say that right? There was that one.
We're gonna have to talk.
yeah, we need
about that.
resolution on that too,
Okay.
because,
But
yeah.
that coupled with the money that was set aside there years ago, and that we're not ready to build the super park tomorrow, but we do have to finish a project today. So that was really my statement on the meeting the other week, and that's why I put a dot on there, because I do want to see that project still continue with the plan that was put in place years ago.
So I just have a few questions. How much do we have in funding right now for Super Park?
270, is that right?
Around
270?
270.
And what is, I know Super Park is moving forward, also the library project, I'm assuming that, those are gonna wanna kind of go hand in hand, that once you start developing the library. you
Right, there's
kind
certainly
of-
certain things like the stuff that needs to go in the ground.
Right,
When the parking lot's being built for the library, if you're gonna put electricity and water back to that site, you wanna do it before you pave the parking lot.
right.
You wanna do it when the land is.
And those funds were, we were thinking that's how we're gonna do it. We needed the library to get closer, and now
Yeah.
it's empty.
So
Yeah.
I guess my question is it even feasible? Because it sounds like, this is already in the works and that money wouldn't
The
necessarily be
plan-
available.
The plan was to go to town meeting in May for Super Park money for CPC.
Okay.
We were gonna go in October, but there's a couple I's to dot and T's to cross.
Okay.
There's some questions about library funding. We wanna make sure that everything is done correctly and that there's no issues there, but, in terms of getting correct estimates and making sure.
He's trying to coordinate it, and you use that money now
Yeah,
to lessen the cost. The CPC money was only gonna cover the delta after you spent the 2/3.
okay.
So if that wasn't clear, I just figured I'd say that, 'cause it's
No,
estimated,
it's clear. Yeah,
over
yeah.
$600,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've already come up with a plan to use that money, but again, town meeting can,
Yeah.
Is there
It's a
still the
democracy.
old phase 1, 2, 3, 4 budget?
No. So, the way that we're looking at it now is, again, phasing it out, there will develop some difficulties when you use the ADA accessible surfacing. You can add on to it, but it's not ideal.
Right.
It's better if you can do it all at once.
Sure.
So again, if you don't have funding, you don't have funding, but, yeah, just going forward, we're trying to get it back, and because people still ask about it, and I think people still ask me about it, but maybe, again, if it's not a priority, town meeting will tell us it's not a priority, and then it won't be.
Is there an estimate for total project cost at this point?
There's not, the last rendition we had of the play structure, we gave the playground designer $500,000 because that's what the estimate was of the last time we did the plan of the equipment. So what can we get for 500? Show us what that looks like.
Sure.
And then there's some add-ons that they could add on, you know, especially because the idea is that it is for inclusionary, so children of all ages, you know, we talked about having sensory panels or other pieces of equipment that, that children with disabilities can use alongside of able-bodied kids.
Sure.
Just together. So equipment, we're looking around 500, you know, site work, we were kind of hoping we could use what we
Until
had.
we have an architect that tells us what that site design is, and that's what we're hoping the next step of this would be, now that we're close enough with the library project, to use that money to do that site design. So I don't want to sign that, I'll bring that contract to you, it's over 15 grand, and you go, we're going to use it, so, but I don't want to exhaust that, so just, somebody's going to tell me what the
Yeah,
next step is.
we're getting some questions answered, and,
Yeah.
but yeah, if we, I would imagine it would be around 800
Okay,
at least.
okay, that makes sense. Do you want to throw it on the agenda for 9:10?
I don't know if we're quite ready. Are we ready?
Well, I mean,
We need to know before that.
it depends what the question is, right? 'Cause
Oh, right.
We're going to do a
Yeah.
warrant article for town meeting for October, which you hope we sign on the 17th. So we kind of need to know about you know,
Oh, right.
the
right.
funding source for green
Right.
communities is one thing, because we don't have the green communities grant in hand, but we did do an appropriation to change the lights. So we said to town meeting, hey, we think we're going to get the grant, but we need this appropriation to do the agreement with the MAPC, and we can save 30% by going with them. So we hedged along the way, but we don't have an answer from green communities in terms of the funding source. So do we want to do the lights, not knowing I don't have the grant? So those are, and use the money that's in the warrant article and hope we get the grant? Or do you want to nix the warrant article and put it towards DPW?
But I just say, I know we're discussing Supercar, here, but it's what is our immediate priority and what is most likely going to be, what we think is going to be, what people are going to agree to. If we don't unturn every stone that we have available to us, and I know the trickiness of what we've described and about the coordination and everything is crucial to the cost of that project, then, I have to ask ourselves, what is our priority? Is our priority getting the DPW facility completed and up and running and leveraging that asset? Or, is it Supercar? And I'm not trying to say one project over another, I'm trying to help get the DPW facility passed without, but, now I'm hearing, a little bit more information I didn't have before, and Jen, you described what was going on in coordination a little bit better, that, gee, maybe it's not a feasible idea. The intention is to do the construction in concert with what's going on at the site.
Yeah, you don't want it to cost more in the long run.
Right, the last thing you want to do is when you parking lot, you dig a trench right through it, right? So-
But at the same time, I appreciate what you're saying and what you're doing. Like, you're trying to unturn every stone, ask the questions. It may not be super hard, but kind of like what Ed said in the beginning. And I think we're talking about this in the next meeting, right? The DPW is back on the agenda. Like, we just need to come up with ideas of how can it not be $1 million? How can we, maybe use 125,000 of Green Communities potential money, or not do the LED lights, or not do Super Park. They're tough discussions to have. I don't agree with either of those solutions, but I appreciate the fact that you don't want $1 million of, to
Well, let's
ask.
say you start with $1 million,
Yeah.
and let's say they say no. What's
Right.
your plan B? We'll
Right.
have something because this project's ongoing.
But this is a great survey question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably position a warrant
Is it 800,000
article.
or is it $1 million? Is there a difference between the two,
Yeah,
Because
and what the
are we
cost
taking away
savings is.
something that we don't need to?
Right.
That's the other thing.
That's what I said, if we start with this and ask the community this question, $1 million, that's a good point.
Okay.
But the backup plan might be a second article if that were to fail.
That's correct.
Right.
To use Super Park and then to use green communities and exhaust those funds. And then you still, and your next fourth question is 500,000, are you willing to vote for that? And if that were to fail,
Stabilization.
We've done everything we
So-
could possibly
Yeah,
do.
Do you want to put this larger discussion on the agenda for Tuesday the 3rd?
the third,
Yeah, Or is that too late?
Is it too, do you think, I mean, that's a full meeting now, but can we fit that in?
I'm sorry, discuss what?
Well, we want to, whether or not we want to have a second warrant article to go
Yeah, I
after.
mean, I kind of figured it out, probably 50 feet of
Okay.
funding discussion.
Okay.
I mean, I can clarify it on the agenda.
And I, just as a side note, Becca, I heard some information on Green Communities today for Sutton. So, they told me something they are not funding for me. So I think, yeah, which is fine, it has nothing to do with this conversation. But I think they're making communities aware, which means that it should be any day. So it's a possibility, if we really need to know this information.
Just got an email from Kelly.
And
Just got an email
if you were to
today.
call your Green Communities coordinator, she may have some information.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
This one we need to.
Or if you're not hearing that you're not getting funding, that's probably a good sign.
I guess so, yeah.
So, how about this one, Peter, this one?
Capital, I think we kind of,
We already
we
talked about
covered
that.
that, absolutely. I think it kind of applied to see. So we can
Okay.
skip that if you like.
Okay, land acquisition, I did only have one, so that's okay. This one is great.
Oh, yeah. All right, I'll make this quick, we can maybe add it on an agenda in the fall. I just put another in capital letters, traffic discussion on the town common and Jordan's Boulevard.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I know there have been several. And there's, accidents on the common, there's a lot of traffic in the common. People have asked about, is Jordan staying a one-way street? And there's people who say it should, and people who say it shouldn't, and it's just something I would want to talk about.
What about signalization on the common? What do you think about that?
Do you want me to answer that right now in this closed meeting? I think I think about this a lot, but there could be on Worcester Street and on Upton Street, like right off the common. So we're not actually putting traffic lights on the common, but like abutting them coming up the hill.
Yeah, between 2 and 1,
Yeah,
and then 1 on the other side.
Yeah.
Because that's what the warrant says you can do.
yeah.
You should,
So like even where, if we kept Jordan's Boulevard one way and you had a traffic signal there for people turning right, people approaching the common at a slower speed.
yeah, it wouldn't warrant it at that intersection, you gotta come up to the Worcester Street, Millbury Street intersection for a light.
Millbury Street. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it won't warrant, they do this study for numbers of cars, so they call it a warrant.
Oh, I
You-
see.
you probably-
Okay.
But
okay.
anyways,
All right.
so anyway, so it won't go, it
Yeah.
can't go at that T intersection, it'll go at the four-way stop,
Mm-hmm.
east and west.
Yeah. And we just, I mean, again, going back to like complete streets and stuff, we have this area of town where it's becoming more and more pedestrian used, bike used, and, people are flying down 140 through the common, and farmers markets and concerts and kids walking over for ice cream and stuff, and I just think there should be constant discussions on this. How do we make it more pedestrian friendly? How do we slow down traffic? How do we, anyone from out of town that drives through Grafton Common, it's like,
Yeah.
what is
Have no idea.
happening here? And it's like, no, you just go that way. So anyway, I just,
Yeah, four-way stop, maybe.
yeah,
You want that, you want to do that like October?
yeah, October, November, like after the town meeting, it's
Okay.
full weight.
Remember, you have a traffic safety committee and DPW advisory committee can take those topics on to, once you decide what the parameter is, you can ship it off to them to look at it in more detail.
Okay. Okay, your resolution is out.
Fantastic. Okay, sort of segueing from the super park discussion and about how all things financial overlap. We can't move on a DPW facility unless we know what's going on with the super park, unless we know what's going on with the library, all these things overlap. And as I'm told repeatedly when I'm out in the community, how can you possibly come to us for more money when you just built the library? So all these things are all really one thing to a great many people out there. We are going to get to a point in the spring where at some point someone or many people are going to propose an override. It would behoove us, I believe, to establish a joint tri-committee subcommittee to work on long-term fiscal projections all year long. And I say this because, you know, again, to the extent that you can involve people with different perspectives in different silos, you can get buy-in from a great many people, and buy-in is going to be crucial for anything that we plan to do for the next few years. I'll give you an example. Arlington does this. And Arlington for finance committees is sort of like the gold standard of finance committees. They have a guy up there, Alan, I can never remember his last name, but he wrote the finance committee handbook. And I was talking to him at the annual FinCom meeting statewide, and asking him, you know, well, how did you deal with your budget deficit, and what did you do? He said, oh no, you know, we're passing overrides every few years, but we get an overwhelming support for them because we do this joint tri-committee long-term projections. We're very clear with people, this is when you're going to run out of money, but the people that moved into town like their schools, and that's what they pay for, and they're perfectly fine coughing up some additional money. So, you know, my worry always has been, at some point, people are going to just start saying no because of fatigue. And this is the sort of thing that I think will help in the long run to get buy-in, to allow people to say, okay, well, you know, they are doing what Pete described and turning over every rock. They are listening to my concern about, you know, the extra pickup truck that you bought, and they are being transparent about, you know, where money goes. Not that we're not already, I mean, I know we are. But any step that you can take to increase participation, increases buy-in, and we need all the buy-in that we're going to be able to get. Because we have a lot going on, you know. Library, DPW, Super Park, those are all capital, operational expenses. We've got union contracts coming up. We've got another teacher's contract negotiation coming up in the short term. So this is the sort of thing that I think would be helpful for people, that we can speak with one voice from the school department to the finance committee to the board of selectmen. This is what we believe our financial present is. This is what we believe our financial future is going to be. Here it is, guys, and do with that information what you will.
Can you explain how that differs from the Sustainability Commission?
So the Sustainability Commission is short-term. It's going to meet over the course of the next 6 months or so. It's going to produce a report, and then it's going, so that report's going to be static. Like you said, you get a report, it's only as good as what you do with it, right? So hopefully that report's going to be acted upon, but the condition of the town changes with every budget that the state submits. It changes with, boy, you know, every, I don't want to point out specific cost drivers, but it's always changing. You know, people move into town, people leave town, there are housing developments, there are additional stresses on our infrastructure. And, you know, to the extent that we can do this once a year on an ongoing basis and say with one voice, yeah, this is what this is. Don't just take our word for it, you know, town meeting. This is not just the Board of Selectmen saying this. This is not just Tim McInerney saying this, but school committee and finance committee, we all met. We work on these year round, and this is what this is. That's all.
Good.
So going from 19 people in a room to fewer people in a room?
Right. So instead of, you know, at the TRICOM meetings where there were 19 people all sort of staring at each other, then, you know, we can get 6 people, you know, that are meeting. I don't know how many times, we can talk about how many times you want to do this.
Like 2 representatives from
Right.
each board.
Yeah.
Or committee.
Or even one. I mean, you can do one person and Tim and Becca.
That seems to me like that can't happen without staff.
No, yeah, it has to happen with stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, because we know that, I mean, we've been 10 years, we've known what the growth curve is for expense, and we know what the revenue is. I mean, you're only gonna have $1.6 million in '21, so if your expenses exceed that, you're cutting the budget. You're cutting the request.
And one of the things that we ran into, of course, the past few years is sort of, again, with the buy-in, you know, expectations about how we're competing with other people.
So do you want to put it,
I would put that as a long-term goal.
Yeah, I would say this, because it sounds like short-term, there's a committee already doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
so-
this would be, we can talk about this like maybe more towards May.
okay.
Again, that's the backdrop of the benchmark of the burden of taxes paid by people in the community. What I do is I look at what our sister communities have for tax bills,
Yeah,
and kind of like, we're right in the bottom third. We're not high, we're not low, and I think that was given to me as a philosophical goal 11 years ago. So I
Right.
want to keep that in that echelon, the bottom 30 percentile, if you will.
right.
So I mean, is that the box that we want to try to stay with? That we don't want to go, to Arlington's tax rate. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think one of the things that I envision the GSC doing in terms of community outreach is a little bit about what we're doing here. Is that a goal? Or is it, because that's a sort of a goal that you're pegging on cost, right? It's costing me $6,500 a year to have this amount of services. Or do you want to reframe the goal as a services-related goal, like, okay, it's my goal to have class sizes that are like this, roads that are graded out at this grade, a fire department that is able to service every portion of the town within 10 minutes, something like that. I think, that would be an interesting discussion to have with people, and let people tell you, no, I'd rather stay with the cost portion, the cost-related goal.
because that's kind of where I started, right? I
Right.
want to make sure that I'm not
Right,
overburdening anyone who's or above average middle class, but in the strata of all the sister communities, I'm already supposed to be in that pocket anyway. So I just want to know if that's kind of the starting point where we're having the discussion, or do we go all services, this is how much it's going to cost? And people will, they get stick shock.
or is there a third way to measure it, which is ability to pay, right? Gross income per town, property
I'm with you,
value.
I go
Yeah,
income tax
I know.
all day, but it
Right.
just, are they willing? What's the
Right.
elasticity?
Well-
That.
Survey Monkey.
First goal.
You got people at Stop and Shop, I got people at Stop and Shop, and I got people in my office,
Mhm.
in our office every day,
Right,
about everything from the font on the tax bill to the
Right.
tax bill itself. It's a wide range, and no one ever wants to pay.
font has all these numbers on it.
They just don't want it, so it's like, so I gotta deal with that reality every day, and I got to deal with, my bosses every week to say,
Right.
we wanna live inside this box, and I need a place in which to jump off from.
I think hopefully that'll be one of the questions that the GSC attempts to answer, is where people want to go with that.
Because we have all that data, with these big sheets that we never put up on the walls, because, it's a long story.
And not to get too far into this, but the one other thing I do want to bring up with cost comparisons between pegging them to other towns is, other towns are doing the same thing. So Shrewsbury is going through this with their override, so we're chasing Shrewsbury's tail, and Shrewsbury's chasing somebody else. It's just, when you start to really think about it, it gets kind of crazy about, how we peg our rules.
I think this has a lot of merit on a couple of levels. One, being on the school board for as long as I've been there, we weren't aware of the day-to-day constraints that Tim needed to present the budget. We had our wants and needs, we presented that, and we expected, hey, this is what we need. But then as things evolved, we would only find out about them when 19 of us got together,
Right.
or the 10 of us got together. And some of those meetings, I will admit, they really didn't solve anything. It just kind of restated what a memo I thought would have been perfect, but at least we got to ask some questions, right? Where I think the creation of a smaller portion of the tri committee least they would all be getting the same information as it's being developed.
Right.
Jeff's point, I understand the staff time, but you have to oversee and manage that, and be able to facilitate something like that. Maybe come up with a concept about, hey, what would it look like? And then we can determine, maybe it's something we want to ask the other committees if they want to be able to
Right.
participate.
And a lot, you know, a lot of the time, a lot of the stuff is static, there are only so many variables, you know, things change when the contracts change, things change when state funding changes, stuff like that, new growth, you know, all that stuff, but by and large, a lot of the stuff is kind of static too. Okay, next two-star thing. I had a senior tax work-off index to inflation. So I know we took a look at the number that people could apply to work off their taxes. And then I got some input from people that they thought that it was still a little bit too low. I was wondering what we thought about revisiting that number and sort of indexing it to inflation.
What Mary and Barbara just did.
It's
Yeah.
capped as a state,
Yeah, there's
you,
state.
that would be a
Oh, is there a state
legislative
cap?
delegation goal.
They
Okay.
did
To
just,
get them
they
to
just,
change it.
they raised it
I
last
thought it was an
year,
age
2 years
thing.
ago.
We maxed out everything under the law, age
They maxed
and
out
income.
the, I mean, not maxed out, they raised the dollar, the cap
Right.
Yeah,
recently, like in the last 3 years.
I feel like in the last 6 months.
Yeah, it was fairly recent.
Sure, but
It
if
was
you wanted to
recent.
get better, we need, the legislative goal piece is the better way to
I
go.
was just, I think that's a.
There's another thing about seniors too that people have spoken to me about, like in Connecticut, in the state of Connecticut, state law allows at the age of 65 that they can freeze their property tax increases, but it's not allowed under Massachusetts law. But, so if you know, you're the age of 65 and you want to do an override, their taxes stay what they were when they were 65. And, you know, everybody's around them, it goes up, but, you know, there's but
Right.
again, that's a state legislative goal, I
Would deed my house to my mom.
well,
Is it income based? Like you have to qualify? Or is it anything? You're 65?
It's gotta be income. I mean,
it's
Yeah,
gotta
yeah,
be,
it should be.
it's gotta be income.
Wonderful
That
tax.
cost is just gonna get shifted to everyone else.
Right, no, I know, but you know, like, there's some sort of program
Yeah.
to help the people stay in the community in which they,
Well,
Right.
that's the second half of the income tax thing that I want to do, is freeze people where they're at. If they're income eligible and age eligible, just, if I'm gonna get income tax from us, who are earners and have kids in school where the burden belongs, people who are 65, picking a number, 65, some income, they
Freeze
just
it.
freeze, forget about 2.5, just freeze it where it is.
Right.
right.
And then I'd probably, you know, 1%, even less than that. I can do like 0.35, I did the math on for our income, and we can eliminate state aid.
Supplement it.
Yeah, well, I was trying to be generous. But the other thing would be good for the state is they get to collect it, they can earn the interest every quarter before they give the disbursement, so they can make money too
Right.
on the interest that they hold back for each community.
Right.
So we can have an incentive for the state too.
Right. So long as Delia doesn't think of it as a state tax, she probably will, but anyway, we can try. What else? Oh, local option income tax, we just talked about that. What are 2 stars, anyone?
No, but we should just read the ones, just to know, just so that they.
Yeah.
I gotta
on
put
these, right?
page 3 in, so I can read them, that'd be good. I can think of
Oh, this
special.
isn't really us, a group. I just want to make sure we get through executive session minutes that we can release the stale ones. Oh, here you go.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm just wondering why we don't say Pledge of Allegiance before meetings. Because every other community seems
Yeah,
to. And I just don't know if like it's something that Grafton has never done or we stopped for a reason, but
Just before town meeting.
we do it before town meeting, but every other town that I go to their board meetings, they say Pledge of Allegiance and now I'm on the board. I'm like, I wonder why we don't do that, so.
I think it's because
Is there a reason?
Yeah, I mean, every community I work with, we've got a motor sounds and
You
it's
can
like,
talk about
No,
that.
there's
That's
a,
stop.
there's a, you know,
there's too much crying.
Yeah.
there's.
So it's silly, but it's like something to bring up during a goals meeting. It's silly and it's not silly.
I think it refocuses you. I think
I
a
do
moment of
too.
silence and pledge allegiance is perfectly appropriate.
We can do that.
Okay, all right, great.
It's just me.
There you go, Tim.
No, I agree.
I mean, because you gotta take a breath when you get there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's
Just-
sort of, Yeah,
You're practicing democracy, that's what
Right,
we're here for.
right.
Why not pledge allegiance?
yes, yes, okay, thank you. So I sort of asked this earlier before we started putting the dots on it, what the policy is for vacant buildings around town. You know, like, do we have, and I guess, you know, I can do a little more homework on what our bylaws are, but just, you know, when we let buildings just sit, like the, you know, Klondike building, or, you know, property owners who own buildings and they're just sitting vacant for a decade, like what?
There is no bylaw, there's no property maintenance bylaw.
Okay.
We were, early on, 9, 10, proposed from broken windows to tall grass. People thought it was crazy, so we never brought it back. But under 40A, under the building code, we can determine, like, the building next to Bushel and Peck.
Yeah.
If you ever driven around the
Yep,
back, you
yep.
see that barn?
Yep.
So, under the state code, the building inspector has to form a committee, a survey board, they call it. It has to be a number of people, it's pretty specific. And they go and they look at the structure, and then they give him a chance to make safe, or condemn, and we demolish. So that's what we do, that's the state law that we follow, but there's no local bylaw relative to, you know, the piece of property on Worcester Street before the Mass Pike, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
As long as it's safe, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, if the grass is
Safe,
just.
no one's living
yeah.
there, you know, we go, you know, I ask the cops a lot to go behind buildings if they're boarded up, and they do, to make sure that it's not off and no one's inside. So, yeah, so there is nothing that we do except for those types of things.
Okay. Do other communities do things about it?
There are property maintenance codes that get enforced, that are passed bylaws. Difficult to enforce without non-criminal disposition. People raffling about their property rights, they don't want the government
Yeah.
necessarily telling them what to do,
Sure.
so.
Fair enough.
Like I said, I got burnt by it because I proposed it, but it never,
Yeah.
I never wanted it.
All right, so, you know, it's a one, just kind of back burner, just
Yeah.
something on my mind.
Well, I mean, we can bring Bob in to give you the whole detail of what happens, and we've done a few. There's been a couple building raised.
The building that is next to the church library,
Yeah.
the church.
Yeah.
Put a lien, we demolish it, put a lien on it, and then if someone wants to buy it, they gotta pay off the lien, and then we develop the site.
The fire up in Quincy corner years ago, that, you took.
Yeah, on the left, before you go to Bridge Street?
Yeah,
Yep.
I know there's been examples where I know the select board had taken action, but the select board has to take action on it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
not something you just
No,
unilaterally do.
I got a vote.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe a workshop or something.
Yeah.
We talked about economic development enough, so that was just specifically on South Grafton, but we kind of covered it in all these discussions. Reviewing boards and committees, like, and this could even be like self-sustaining within the boards and committees, like every 5 years or so, of just, you know, maybe having the select board kind of ask, are they meeting their charge? Has their charge changed? I mean, I don't know if we do that. Do we do that?
So
already?
we sort of, there's a roundabout way, it comes up before Finance Committee, when every sort of organization has a budget. And I remember like the first 3 years I was on FinCom, I asked, what the heck is the Together We Can Committee? But they do meet, I think they still are active, but there were a couple that we weeded out. I can't remember which one. There was like a fire station sustainability committee
There
or
was
something
an
that was
energy
weeded out.
committee.
Yes.
Okay, that was very active, I think right around the time when we were doing recycling. There was a number of committees, personnel advisories and
Right.
Yeah, but no money though. You wouldn't-
Right.
Finance committee really wouldn't talk to those.
no,
folks.
but I mean,
No.
there is an informal process that I know the
Okay.
board has always followed, that I
Yeah.
always kind of found interesting, because
Right.
there was no set parameters, it was
Yeah.
kind of like, I haven't met in 4 years.
So if you do the
Right.
committee report, then you'll solve it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the, I know the last time, when I wrote the super park charge the last time, I actually, and I think when we, maybe every new charge we write, we should consider doing this, is putting a, if this committee doesn't meet in a year, 6 months,
Right.
whatever it is thereby dissolved, so that we
Yes,
don't have to
yes.
go through them and dissolve them.
That's good.
You know, like just, again, if a committee is inactive, if it doesn't meet for whatever amount of time we deem appropriate, then it's dissolved.
I was asking you about executive session minutes,
With me?
because Ed referenced executive session
I don't
minutes.
have them with me.
Did we bring any?
Not here.
Were you talking about approving them tonight?
No, just in general, to get
We
them
have
approved.
some that are already here.
Yeah.
We just have to go into executive session.
Oh,
Oh,
okay, oh, I see.
we can do that
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last one, again,
Uh,
number one, and Ed put a.
I had to, you're welcome.
I'm just curious when the trash and recycling contract is up. Do you know, off the top of your head?
Trash and recycling, well, it's two-part question, right? So Wheel Harvey.
Well, is it the same? So Wheeler.
No, Wheeler Bridge is one, which we
Yeah.
just signed on for an extension. I
Great.
can't tell you the date.
What's the tipping fee right now? Do you know?
6676.
Oh, that's great. Good.
Six,
great.
I think it's 6676.
I think it's.
Okay.
All right, we'll take it under
It's in
oath.
the 66.
But we can get you the exact
range.
number.
Yeah, that's good.
We can get you the
Yeah,
exact
we
number.
got a good deal with them because we were with someone that, Covanta?
Yeah, even though they went out of business, it's okay.
Okay.
We
And then-
hedged with them and got them down.
Yeah.
And then we did the same thing with Harvey. I don't know, we must have a 5-year deal with 2-year extensions.
Okay.
But they held the number last year at a 0 increase. Every other year goes out maybe 3 to 5%.
So this is something that could kind of fall under the, whatever we decide to call the green.
Yeah.
And green deal stuff. So, you know, recycling has, changed, as we all know, in the past 10 years, right? And so recycling isn't being, reused in the way it used to be, and it's costing the town more, so I'm be curious to know.
Well, it's not costing us.
It's not costing you more, but
Good.
I'd
Harvey's costing-
want to come up with a plan before we sign another contract. And there may even be a way, and this is going to sound crazy, and I'm saying this on camera, people are going to throw tomatoes at their phone and computer saying this, but like, we're entering a world where recycling doesn't make sense anymore. And especially with the contract with Wheelabrator, where we burn trash for energy, we might be able to look at a whole new plan where we're not recycling anymore. I know, it sounds insane, but recycling doesn't make sense anymore. All this recycling is ending up on beaches in Indonesia. It's not good for the planet. And so I'm just curious, like, how much money we're actually saving. Because we have Wheelabrator that is burning clean energy.
Well, I mean,
Already, it's not
it would just be the
dumping it,
tonnage
so
would be the
just-
math, it would be the
It would be
tonnage
the tonnage.
multiplied
So
by the
66,
burn.
yeah.
They're
Or a
trying
ton.
to, you just signed a letter for Wheelabrator?
To increase their
To give
burning
you-
ability.
Yeah.
To increase the amount that they.
So 100% of Wheelabrator's burning goes to renewable energy.
Yeah,
Our
Right.
recycling
that's
does not. And
Right.
so,
And now it's-
No, but
10
there's no
years ago,
cost for
and
that.
I was the face of reduce, reuse, recycle.
You were the
And
bad lady.
I was the bag lady. Trash lady or the bag lady, take your pick. So, I'm just saying, like, this is something that, maybe it's not even a board goal, but I'd just be interested in, and this is the stuff that I think about at 3 in the morning. What are the numbers to Wheelabrator? What are the numbers to Harvey? What's the future? And this is when we go to MMA meetings and stuff, I mean, this is not a discussion that's just happening in Grafton.
Oh, no.
It's happening all over the state, it's happening nationwide. What is the next step post this recycling phase, And, Doreen DeFazio is trying to solve it single-handedly for the town of Grafton. And we're gonna be the pioneers of what to do.
There are some technology, a group from Maine that has a plant that uses all food waste, all plastic, and converts it to jet fuel, and they're trying to come to Central Mass. We couldn't fit them on our site here, so I tried to get them to Shrewsbury, and now they're talking to the city, so
Nice.
there's a possibility, but it's probably a long way off.
Yeah,
I
It's
don't
like
know if
the end of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Where he puts the Mr.
Put it all
Fuel.
in
Yeah.
banana
That's
peels,
awesome.
Coke bottles.
That's great.
But right now, recycling does not cost us
Okay,
money to burn.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that tonnage
Yeah.
certainly doesn't go.
Yeah, and the tonnage right now is probably, what, 40% at least?
Yeah, in terms of
50%?
recycling versus
Yeah,
trash?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't-
So
I don't
that
know.
would-
I-
So
I
that
mean,
would be
I
a
don't
hard
think
sell
that's
for
a lot.
people, because recycling is free, right?
Yeah.
And we have 2% contaminant, right? We're like the lowest
Yeah,
community.
so
contaminant.
it may not work, but
waste.
I just,
No, it's something to think about.
No, but I think in 5 years, it's all getting burned. I agree with you.
yeah,
Unless they find a way to make it.
we just need to, we
You
just
have to
need
get
to.
people to consume less.
Right,
That's
right.
what you have to, but that's not like,
That's a cultural change.
it's not a problem that this board.
No, but again, like that's.
How do you know that?
You're right, I know, you guys could, so.
Well, this is
We'll
mine.
have-
I'm using a plastic.
Yeah, right,
bottle and
yeah.
I'm bringing my own.
Sorry about that.
Anyway,
I refill them every year.
I look to adjourn, unless we're done, I'm sorry.
I think we can.
Well, that would be the.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Unless you have anything.
No?
That was a good meeting.
That was
Thank you very
good.
much.